All council members are present, town attorney, town clerk, and all three of our town managers. With that, please rise.
Village.
Please rise for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we gather here to make decisions that affect our citizens and island, we ask you to lift your heads, open your eyes, and open your hearts. Our most serious duty is to look to the community we share, the examples we make, and the legacies we leave. That should be our greatest, most courageous, and noble intention. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, is there a motion to approve the final agenda?
So moved.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next is public comment. Madam Clerk?
First up, I have Cindy Johnson.
Good morning, Town Council, Town Attorney, Amy, Town Managers, and welcome, Mr. Hyatt. We look forward to working with you. So I guess our FPL presentation today has to do with whether it is safer to have white light or amber light. Once again, not even 2 weeks after the storm, FPL began installing these 4K white lights. The town, and I notified the town, and I talked to FPL, and everyone knows that we're not allowed to have white LED lights on Estero Boulevard. The FWC wouldn't even approve a dual fixture that would be white for 6 months. So obviously the state agencies, which would be the FWC, FDEP, FDOT, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, do not believe that amber lights are less safe than 4K lights. Now let's talk about the 4K lights that are installed, and if we go to have them installing a temporary amber light, if we would be less safe. The county is only paying for crosswalk lighting because, according to the Green Book, it's only the crosswalks that have to be lit for Estero Boulevard to be safe. So all our extraneous lighting that we have in between the crosswalks aren't necessary for safety. But our community has gone through years of deciding and has always wanted uniform lighting down Estero Boulevard. But the county has said, if you want that, you have to pay for it. If for some reason we can't afford that, if we don't get the appropriation and we can't afford that, then I guess it's pretty easy. The county can pay for the crosswalks and we will owe no money for Estero Boulevard. We would just have to pay for the crosswalks from Times Square to Bowditch Park because that's our roadway. Like I said, it's unfortunate again that this has happened. It seems like now again, we're entered into a debate of whether shielding white lights is appropriate. And I have a little clip I can play for you between Mr. Culling and Mayor Allers about this situation.
And the fixture properly shielded, it would meet FWC requirements. There's no visibility from the beach, and those fixtures would not need to be turned off during trail season.
So you said something very important there that I was hoping you were going to say. Properly shielded, no matter what color temperature of the light, has to be done to be able to comply with FWC requirements.
I'm not sure, is that what you said? I think you said the amber properly shielded would comply with FWC. I think then Councilor Eller said any type of light properly shielded. There's two different items. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want to just make sure I'm clear. I heard what you said. Sure. Which one did you say?
Proper shielding is required by FWC, and my understanding is that amber is a required feature of a tunnel light.
Thank you.
Okay. The Cree light has been used all over the state and surely provides the 1 to 1.5 foot candle that is required for safety at the crosswalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Steve Johnson.
Morning, council, managers, town managers, plural, and all those listening. You know, the other day, Monday, I was out walking and we ran into the mayor, and he kind of gave us a heads up that this would be presented at the council meeting on Monday, this Monday, which is today. At the time, I gave him the benefit of the doubt that I didn't understand that he was suggesting that there are two options for this town to pursue to light the boulevard during turtle season. Then I watched the mayor at the Mondays with the mayor as he discussed what was coming, and I have to admit I was absolutely flabbergasted. It starts out by saying that he's going to have the facts up front, so that everybody can think about it, come to the meeting, and let us know how you want it to go. You know, as if it's just an opinion you can come up and talk about. He also went on to say that we're back to square one with the lighting when it comes to the discussion. Does shielding work? Doesn't it work? That's a discussion I thought I should bring to council to hash it out and make a decision. Just like that. It's important everyone has the facts. If you shield them, FDOT and other people say that works. Now, I can't wait to have you articulate exactly how FDOT has pulled back their Green Book standards that they just recently added to address the wildlife areas of concerns, which the town is part of, and also who the other people are that says that works. If you don't shield them and go to amber, you know, instead of a full light, you'll have 1/5 of what you have currently. Well, what we had currently was high pressure sodium. So if we're comparing these 4,000 K blowtorches that were added after the storm versus what everybody's accustomed to, high pressure sodium, there's a minimal difference. And again, safety is of no concern. You know, we spent 4 years, we turned every rock over, we debated every point, we did a comprehensive review of the regulations and an exhaustive safety discussions. This is the third council that's seated that's discussing this. We went through public safety, MRF advisory board, stakeholder meetings. We've heard from the FWC, FDOT, LEDOT, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Sanibel has weighed in on it. Conservation organizations like Turtle Time, Sea Turtle Conservancy. We've done an MPO study. Town lighting, we've paid $100,000 plus for them to tell us that we have to have amber lights. FPL has weighed in themselves, telling us to comply, you need amber lighting. The town attorney has weighed in twice publicly on compliance and individually to, I know, the returning members of the board. I'm sorry, of town council, and we put together a beautiful unanimous proclamation to Lee County stating our objective of an all amber solution. So white lights, I think that's poppycock. I mean, it's absolute nonsense. It's non-compliant by every way you can possibly look at it, and the result could potentially be take, which, according to the Endangered Species Act, is up to $25,000 per organism that dies. So if a big sea turtle goes out in the middle of the Estero Boulevard, it's run over, and the town knowingly puts up white lights during the turtle season, that's $25,000 maximum. If a nest hatches and 100 turtles come out and get run over, that's $2.5 million that this town is liable for. I think it's absolutely irresponsible to even consider it as an option. And it's unfair to all the discussion and all the community consensus that we've had during this long journey. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Steve.
Jennifer Rusk.
Looks like we're having a MRF pop-up.
You know me and my props. Good morning, town council. Good morning,
Jennifer.
staff.
Pulling mic down here.
Good morning, town council. Good morning, town staff and town managers. Today I am here, Jennifer Rusk, by the way. I wanted to update the 2 new council members and remind the others on information I had collected back in 2021 during the time we were working with the lighting consultants. I had contacted the Treasure Island Police Department to get their insight regarding the turtle lights on their main Gulf Boulevard. Chief Barkley of Treasure Island requested his night shift patrol to respond to 3 questions. Question number 1, do you have any complaints about the turtle lighting? Answer, no complaints. Question 2, is the lighting bright enough at night to patrol? Answer, the lights have a different hue, but the area is adequately lit. Question number 3, have any citizens complained about the turtle lights? Answer, no complaints. So here's an example of amber lights being used in a neighboring community with no complaints and adequately lit and safe for the Treasure Island Police Department. So I'm asking council this morning to please follow the state regulations and rules and use amber lights in addition to fully being shielded. I would also like to add that on FPL's Keep the Sea Turtle in the Dark brochure, brochures, they state that they pledge in writing every year to protect the federally endangered species and pledge specifically to protect sea turtles. I don't think it would be wise of them to go back on that and not follow the state guidelines. And since they are here, which I don't know if they are, I would like to remind you of your pledge. Our environmental promise. At FPL, we understand that caring for the environment is just as important as providing customers with affordable, reliable power now and in the future. This is reflected in our efforts to protect the air we breathe, the water and the land we use, and the plants and the animals that share our planet. As a clean energy company, we're committed and dedicated to minimizing our impact on the environment and the place we all call home. FPL and Nextra Energy family of companies embrace an environmental policy that is part of a company-wide code of business conduct and ethics. Every year, company officers and managers reaffirm this pledge. Through our environmental programs, we're helping to minimize habitat loss from construction and reduce water use. We work every day to make Florida a better place for us all by supporting programs that make nesting environments better for our wild treasures like Florida sea turtles. And with that being said, I will ask FPL, the town council, our town, to follow the state guidelines and regulations and use amber lights in addition to fully shielding. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Mary Rose Spalletta.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to address everyone in the interest of time. I'm Mary Rose Spalletta. I am a property owner, a Fort Myers Beach resident, a MRF member, and a very active volunteer on the beach. I stand in opposition to white lights on Estero Boulevard during any season for any time, and that's why I'm here. I think when we think about our lighting, we need to consider human safety, wildlife enhancement, and the cost. Light management is not a choice between human safety and wildlife because bright white impacts and interferes with normal night vision. It causes glare and it produces blind spots. With regards to humans, brighter is not better. Narrowband amber lights produce a warm light, no glare and no discomfort. Wildlife-friendly amber lights are sufficient for human nighttime vision. Once installed, they will not have to be turned off during nesting season. Amber lights will not disorient wildlife. They will not cause sky glow. They will not cause human-like glare blindness. They will enhance boulevard security by producing uniform light the length of the beach. We need to be prudent stewards of our living beach. We need to comply completely with existing lighting regulations. We cannot accept temporary solutions. Both FWC and FDOT have stated that narrow band amber lights are the best option. Regarding costs, long-term solutions are always wiser than temporary moves. I don't think we should be a party to or pay in any way, shape, or form for temporary white lights. Narrow band amber LED lights are the year-round best idea for Fort Myers Beach. That is what we should be installing on our boulevard and all of our side streets. Thanks for listening, and please do the right thing.
Thank you, Mary Rose.
That's all I have signed up.
Is there anyone else? Yep, come on up, will you?
Good morning. How you
morning.
doing? Leah Gregg, Palermo Circle. So hope you all are having a nice day. Good to see you all. Thanks for all you're doing. I know it's not easy out there. So I came today to support my friends over there and support this lighting situation. So Eric Culling from FPL stated during a previous meeting that an amber fixture properly shielded would meet FWC requirements and would not need to be turned off during turtle season. He also said amber is a required feature. So if you decide to shield our lights that are currently there, they will need to be turned off really for the next 6 months and every turtle season thereafter. Contrary to what some of you have said, the light color temperature does matter, and shielding our current fixtures will not meet FWC requirements. Yet shielding the current lighting fixtures is a topic of today's discussion. Now, there's numerous US and international research studies and data available on street lighting. The US Department of Energy, the American Medical Association, the National Institute of Health, to name a few, and they all come to the same conclusion that bright white streetlights over 300 Kelvin that appear white to the human eye are actually blue, causing disabling glare that will reduce driver vision, decrease safety, and actually cause damage to the human eye. Data also shows danger from contrast, resulting in muscle fatigue in the eye, and could cause anxiety, agitation, and headaches. Our own MPO study depicts the same human health risk data. It also provides a chart of a 5-year period comparing crash data for motorized vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. And the 5-year total data states 76% of all crashes occur during daylight, not at night. Another study states the switch to LED streetlights was done without considering the impacts of high color temperatures. Local governments throughout the country, including ours, are still installing 4,000 Kelvin lights, even though they have known health risks. Many cities across the US have made the mistake of installing bright lights and had to replace them with human safe lighting. There's a good case study about this in the United States Department of Energy study that I shared with each of you, as well as the American Medical Association. And there's also the assumption that bright lights will keep us safer from crime and help prevent vehicle accidents. This assumption is not supported by the research. A 2015 study by the National Institute of Health found no evidence that street lighting reduced either crime or road traffic injuries. And a review published by the US Department of Justice of 7 studies also concluded that bright lighting was not an effective means of preventing crime. So I really don't know how many more studies or data or consultants or discussions y'all need to make the right choice to keep humans and wildlife safe. So FWC, the Environmental Protection Agency, our own town ordinance, all providing the lighting that is required, all the data that is required, yet you still keep trying to find options that simply won't work. It's not allowed. As Eric said, amber lighting is required. It's required to even put shield lights around it. So you have the responsibility, in short, to use lights we're required to use by law. You have the responsibility to ensure human safety is not jeopardized by installing 4,000 Kelvin lighting. So just proper lighting, just one last comment regarding cost. I know that's an issue, but it's also an investment, and it will provide enhanced safety for humans and our environment. So please don't be fooled thinking the brighter lights are better. It isn't, or the color temperature doesn't matter. It does. Please stick to what you all unanimously
And in 1996, started meeting in 1996 on the second floor, for the first time on the second floor of our town, what is now our old town hall building. And the advisory committees have played such an enormous role in shaping policy on the island, and created thought leaders on this island, and gathered ideas that have been so useful to town. So anyways, I found this, and this by no means is an exhaustive list of everybody who served on an advisory committee. Many of the folks took their placards when they left. Some, I'm sure, were lost at some point. This is just a bunch of these that were gathered, that I thought, just to honor the people that have served and volunteered their time for so many years and so many hours. I thought I would read their names, and I'll go through quickly. But if you hear your name, I'm going to give these to Amy Baker, our clerk, town clerk, afterwards. You can come to the temporary town hall and pick them up from Amy. If you know of somebody, you recognize the name and you know where they are, and you can pick it up for them, that's great too. And some people will be tickled by them. Some could probably care less. But at the same time, I think it's a nice memento to honor the various people that have served over the years in the town. First, I just had these little placards from some town council members: Anita Saracita, Bruce Butcher, Joanne Champ, Summer Stockton. Here's the town attorney. You can pass that down to him. I see some staff ones: Chelsea O'Reilly, staff liaison; Chelsea O'Reilly, Public Works Director; Dan Allers, Boar Cab. You can take that one, Dan. Becky Bodnar from Boar Cab; David Anderson from Boar Cab; Tom Myers from Boar Cab; Peg Lamarca from Boar Cab; Denise Monahan from Boar Cab; Holly Sweeten from Boar Cab; Ray Sproul from Boar Cab; Lee Melsick from Boar Cab; Holly Tribble from Boar Cab; Bill Veach, Public Safety Committee; Edward Scott, Public Safety Committee; Ron Fleming, Public Safety Committee, now on the Fire Board. Another one for Ron. Al Durrett, Public Safety Committee; Tony Scopel, Public Safety Committee; Tom Myers, Public Safety Committee; Pete Crumpacker, Public Safety Committee; Bruce Butcher, Public Safety Committee; Tom Gressman, Public Safety Committee; Joseph LaDuca, Public Safety Committee; Edward Scott, Public Safety Committee; Elizabeth Holliday, Community Resource Advisory Board, which is CRAB; Trish Hickey, this is all CRAB; Jim Rodwell, Natasha Jameson, Bill Veach, CRAB; Pamela Koch, Corky Condon, Bill Fagan, Linda Beasley. Again, these are still CRAB. Yvonne Corbin, Bill Fagan, Mary Greer, Mark Ludvigsen, Jim Ray, Natasha Jameson, Michael Lund, Elizabeth Holliday, Carrie Wegg. And this is Marine Resources Task Force, Eldon Reidner. And this is Marine Resource Task Force again, Trey Andre, Sarah Torgeson, Renee Jeffries Hale, Justin Paulukas, Bill Veach, Marine Resources Task Force, Greg Holmes, Carrie Hendry Wieg, Tony Lubig, Louise Kowich, Shannon Mapes, Patty Festi. This is CellCab, Cynthia Richardson. This is LPA, Megan Hale, Susan Catt, LPA. There's Adderholt, LPA, Dan Hughes, LPA. May he rest in peace. Karen Swanback, LPA, Tim Smith, Chuck Bodenhafer, Joanne Champ, LPA, Hank Zuba, LPA, Lori Wolf, John Katzich, Dan Allers, LPA, Bruce Butcher, Audit Committee, Jim Rodwell, Audit Committee, John Goggin, Audit Committee, Joseph Kirkbride, Audit Committee, Hank Zuba, Audit Committee, Hank Zuba Ad Hoc. And I asked Anita what the Ad Hoc Committee was, and apparently there was a 5-member Ad Hoc Committee set up to figure out what to do with the area that is now Margaritaville. This was years ago. And there's Hank Zuba, Tracy Gore was on that committee, Bruce Butcher, Bill Freeman, John Polland, William Kubasek, and he was on the Anchorage Advisory Committee. And then we had the Charter Review Committee, which is every so many years, and I forget what it is, Amy and Dan, 10 years. We review our town charter to see if it needs to be updated or amended. And the last time I think Dan Parker served, Tom Babcock served, Jay Light, Daniel Hughes, and Miffy Greer. So I just wanted to thank everybody for their service to the town of Fort Myers Beach as we sort of reminisce about our history as we move from our old town hall to hopefully a more permanent, temporary town hall, then to a permanent town hall. So thank you for indulging me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
That's all I've got.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to piggyback on something that Jim was saying. I was so impressed with the photo you posted with all the signs on it. My thought was that maybe we should save these and put a display in town hall of all the volunteers.
Well, I love the idea, Councilor Veets. The challenge is this is by far an exhaustive list of folks who have volunteered their times. I think as I talked to the town clerk, many of the folks took those with them when they left the committees. I'd hate to, it's certainly colorful. I grant you that, but it's certainly not exhaustive. So I'm open to that. Let's think about that. But if we're going to do that, I'd love to recognize, and I don't know if the list even exists of everybody who served, because those are just tremendous amount of volunteer hours on behalf of the people of Fort Myers Beach, but certainly open to the concept.
Thank you. Counselor King?
Well, happy May Day, comrades. I got a few things. I, after 7 months, was able to get back on the island living yesterday, not in my own residence, but I'm happy to be here anyway. And I want to thank my wife, Chris, who made that all possible. And she's a heck of an organizer and a heck of a packer. So thanks, dear. I want to welcome Andy. Look forward to many years working with you as we move Fort Myers Beach forward. And I want to thank the two individuals to your right, Chris and Keith, for stepping in and stepping up and getting us to where we are today. It's been a fun ride so far. I'm enjoying every minute of it. I'm going to miss you too. Maybe Keith more. He laughs at my jokes, but thank you for what you've done for Fort Myers Beach as well.
Anything else, Counselor King?
That'll take care of it. Thank you.
All right. Well, you covered what I was going to say, so I won't reiterate it. These guys know how I feel about them. They're probably tired of hearing me talk, so I won't continue on. Welcome, Andy. Looking forward to working with you. We also have a proclamation, so I will read it. The Town of Fort Myers Beach Proclamation. Whereas the Town of Fort Myers Beach in Lee County, Florida, with its great year-round weather and saltwater resources, provides special water-related recreational activity to its residents and people from around the world. And whereas this area's miles of saltwater, tidal coastline, rivers, bays, ponds, and canals provide many of the needed outlets for recreation and relaxation. And whereas recreational boating is one of the Florida's leading outdoor activities with more than world. And whereas every year lives are lost in boating accidents in spite of educational efforts of the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, the U.S. Power Squadron, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and local agencies. And whereas federal, state, and local agencies and private companies and groups have combined their efforts to reduce boating accidents by developing and executing safety training programs such as Boat Smart, Boat Safe, and You're in Command. And whereas the sponsors of these programs have focused their efforts toward youth and the general public of Lee County, Florida, urging them to enhance boating pleasure and avoid possible loss of life while reducing the loss of property and marine accidents. And whereas on average, 600 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S. where cause of death was known. 81% of fatal boating accident victims drowned. Of those drowning victims with reported life jacket usage, 83% were not wearing a life jacket. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed that the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, proclaims May 20th through May 26th, 2023 as Safe Boating Week, and urges all citizens to join in learning and practicing safe boating, wearing a life jacket, taking boating and education courses, getting a vessel safety check, operating their vessels responsibly, safely, soberly, and obeying Coast Guard regulations. Given under my hand and the seal of the office of mayor this first day of May 2023, sorry. With us here, we have Mr. Gregory Masnick and Dan Eaton. Gentlemen, would you like to come up and say a few words? Go on up to the podium there.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council and residents of Fort Myers Beach. My name is Greg Masonic. I'm the Flotilla Commander of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary.
Greg, can you speak into the mic?
Yeah, once again, Mr. Mayor and City Council members and residents here at Fort Myers Beach. My name is Greg Masonic. I'm the Flotilla Commander here at Fort Myers Beach. And as we know, these past many months, it's been a very serious situation, but everything is recovering. And, you know, the Coast Guard is here to assist and make you feel safer. And that's what our job is too, as the Mr. Mayor said, we teach safe boating classes, recreational boating. We do vessel exams. So get us involved. We have a lot of new programs we're starting up again because we are, more involved with the beach as well. So thank you, sir, for this proclamation.
Thank you, sir.
Sure. Mr. Dan Eaton.
Once again, thank you very much for having us and recognize the importance of this upcoming week in May. Brings attention to the simple fact of wearing a life jacket can save lives. And the more we can turn around and spread that message cannot be underestimated. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your service as a master captain. I certainly appreciate everything that you do, and education is very, very important. So let's give this to you and get a picture if you guys would like. You want us to come around front or you want? You guys want to stand up? We'll take a picture. Huddle on in. I don't bite.
Much?
No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay, thank you again. Thank you. Next, we have advisory committee items, reports, and appointments. Madam Clerk, is there anyone?
No.
Is there any committees here that want to come up and say a few words? Yeah, come on up, Steve.
I really hadn't intended on speaking on behalf of Murph, but I did want to provide some updated information, certainly at the request of Councilman King, on the Big Carlos Bridge project. We were able to get some more information. So the artificial reef is a go. I think I'd mentioned that during my last, but the intentions are that the reef will be placed just northwest as you leave Big Carlos Pass, 4 nautical miles out and about 25 feet of water. It's with the Army Corps of Engineers right now. They have to permit it. So it's not in what I had thought originally pre-permitted area out in Edison Reef that has lapsed. And so they're re-permitting it. Talking to Dave Murphy, who is the project engineer for the project, he said that probably won't happen for another couple of years because obviously we'll be using the existing bridge as they build a new one, and not until that new one is functional will they actually destroy that rubble and take it out. In addition, on the fishing pier is really with the Parks Department. The actual functional building of the pier will be accessed on the Lover's Key side. So there won't be any facilities on the Fort Myers Beach side. There will be parking, handicap parking, ADA accessible, and I guess it's with still Park and Recs, Lee County Park and Recs, whether or not there will be fish cleaning stations, water, and bathrooms. So that's just a quick update on that project.
I don't expect you to know this, Steve, but I'll maybe the mayor knows because I know his wife is on the board. For Lover's Key, when they build that new South Bridge, it's going to be just have wonderful pedestrian and bike capacity, which is going to be great for our island to be able to go utilize Lover's Key Park much safer. Do you know if are they fashioning, or is Lover's Key fashioning an entrance so when you go over that bridge, that new bridge, you'll be able to enter Lover's Key Park, or will you have to go on the highway to get to the main entrance of Lover's Key?
I can answer that one, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry. Karen's on the board.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly. I was like,
forgive me, Councilor Woodson. I'm
subject
sorry.
matter expert right here. Yep.
Thanks for getting me out of the fire.
Yeah, we've had many conversations about this, and during the construction, it's totally going to be blocked off, that whole north entrance and everything there. So people will not be able to get into Lover's Key. They won't even be able to get down to that beach. But once it's completed, there will be a north entrance again. By that time, they will have all of the paths cleared. They're still in the process of doing that. Lover's Key is still not open. And there's actually, we had hoped it was going to be open by April 1st and then May 1st and June 1st. But because there is still no electricity, no power, buildings are still being rebuilt. We don't have an opening date. But it will be closed during construction, but then open with that north entrance again, along with the same entrance on Estero.
That is great news, because the capacity of that new bridge for bikes and pedestrians is almost quadrupled And
Right.
so people just be able to very easily and safely just take a ride over to Lovers Key Park in a much more, I think, efficient and safer way. So I'm glad to hear that.
Get in that one side and then you've got all the paths to
It's
go
perfect.
through
It-
and then
it-
to
it'll be
get to the main
spectacular.
part.
Yeah.
So
Thank you very much, Counselor Woodson. I apologize. I forgot you're on the board as
Still
well.
on it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. All right.
Anything else, Vice Mayor? We're good to go.
Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Oh, perfect.
It
No.
illustrated a very helpful question, though. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
second,
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Next, we have a presentation from Florida Power and Light. I believe, Eric, you're going to come up? Before you start, I want to, go ahead, come up. I just wanted to touch on a few things. First, I do want to apologize. Steve was correct. I did misspeak when I was talking last Monday about the FDOT. I wanted to kind of give you an idea of, and when I was relating to the facts, I was relating to the facts about what he's going to tell you today. That's what I was referring to, not the facts of the things that, as you have all eloquently said, we've discussed ad nauseum over the years. But I think it's also it's important to know that Keith and I, when we talked with FPL about this, we didn't feel that that we were comfortable to make a decision like this without bringing it forward for discussion. Because as we all know, we're dealing with a much different island now. There's much more debris laying around on the road. So we felt it was important for them to come out and kind of lay out the two options that they lay out to us to give us better than what we had before. But I think it's also very important to point out that both Chris and I have worked, and Keith have worked tirelessly with the legislature and with FPL. And some of, I'll be the first to admit it, some of the conversations we had with FPL, I apologize for it, maybe got a little more heated than I probably should have, but I was heated, and they will be able to tell you that we were not going to accept any other total lighting solution for this island unless it was all amber. And we pushed very, very hard to make sure that what we went to the legislature with was an all amber solution for the entire island, including the side streets. We don't have a final answer on that. We asked for the appropriation money to do that. I'm hoping in the next week or so, we'll get an answer from our legislatures as to, but we are pushing very forward. This presentation was nothing more than an information for the council to hear from the public and make the decision on which way to go as a temporary solution. And if you will touch on it, if you wouldn't mind, I know we've talked about it, but if the appropriation request money comes in, what the time frame would be to implement that full amber solution that we've discussed and brought forward. So thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Charlotte Miller with FPL External Affairs. With me is Eric Culling from our Lighting Services Group. Eric's going to give you all the details, but I wanted to make a few comments to hopefully clarify some of the comments that were made from the audience today.
Charlotte, pull your mic down.
Okay, is it a little too high? Is that better? Okay, great. Thanks. Just want to assure everyone that FPL is very committed to not only being a part of environmental protection and stewardship, but also being an industry leader in that area. So we are very committed in a number of ways to preserving our environment. As far as turtle lighting goes, as a utility, FPL has the responsibility to provide appropriate turtle lighting options to municipalities and counties. And then, as the council knows, it's up to, in this case, the town to determine what that appropriate option is for turtle lighting so that they can be in compliance with state requirements. Eric previously presented a permanent solution, which the town is in favor of, which is, as mentioned earlier, a narrow band amber shielded lighting option. And that is what Dan referred to. Mayor Allers, that we are waiting to hear from the state as to whether or not those appropriations dollars have been approved and what the time frame is for receiving them. So our primary purpose here today, as Mayor Allers mentioned, is to provide temporary solutions for this turtle season. As you know, it started today. This is not a permanent solution. There is an amber solution that Eric's about to present. So we just wanted to clarify that. And the purpose, as again, the council knows today, is to give direction on how they would like to go for a temporary solution while we await approval for the permanent one with the funding. And I'll turn it over to
See,
Eric.
Charlotte, before you go,
Yes.
it's for people who are watching.
Yes.
It's kind of helpful just to set the table as to, so after the storm, what were the actions that FP&L has taken thus far that leads us to the discussions that we're having right now? What happened to our lighting and what was done to repair it and
Sure.
just give us a little bit of background.
That's an important question. As you know, once the storm came through, the island was completely dark. The lighting that was here prior to the storm was not turtle lighting appropriate because the town was in the process of determining what type of turtle lighting you wanted to put in. Because that decision had not been made and because we had the capability to quickly put up lighting for safety reasons that as you know, I don't have to describe, you know, even better than I, the state of the island as far as safety, debris, et cetera. Many people, contractors working 24 hours a day. The decision was made that safety was paramount and that the lighting that went up, although not turtle appropriate, because that requires quite a bit. It requires installation. It required a time frame that would not get lighting back up on the island immediately. So we replaced on Estero Boulevard what was there.
That was my question. So you, in essence, replaced what was there after the storm.
Mhm.
Nothing new, nothing.
No, nothing new.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That just helps people as we get to this
Understand.
point in the
Yeah.
conversation, understand where we're at.
Well, I think that maybe you're talking about for placement of lights because there were different lights than we had. We had it's the sodium lights and then they put up LED lights. So they were different.
They were, the locations were the same. So it provided the same type of lighting. That is correct, though. It did go from high pressure sodium to LED.
Yeah.
Again, it was safety related. It was so that the town could begin to function 24 hours a day with all the construction and removals that were going on.
And
yeah.
Sorry, and I do remember we talked probably 5-6 months ago when these are going in about the option of putting in amber lights at that time. And you said didn't have them available.
You want to address that?
Eric Calling, FPL LED Lighting Solutions. We do have, and at that time we did have amber options available. The options that were currently available on our catalog, though, don't believe met what the standards that the town was looking to achieve from a lighting perspective at that time.
And Eric, just for folks who are listening, so the fixtures, Councilor Veach said that was replaced. Could you just describe what was there pre-Ian and then what you replaced it with and what the difference of those two are?
Yeah, so pre-Ian, they were typically a 200-watt high-pressure sodium, and the lights that were installed basically through a restoration effort per our tariff were an equivalency that just happened to be LED.
Thank you.
How many lights were reinstalled?
88.
88. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'll hand it over to Eric to present the temporary option.
Thank you, Council, for your time this morning. Two options that I wanted to discuss with you to get some direction on how we should proceed. In front of you, I've handed out, there are a total of 131 locations from the north end of the island down to the pass. Again, we've replaced 88 of those directly after Ian, and our restoration team, streetlight restoration team, is continuing to replace the remaining units of those 131. The first page here represents a no upfront cost to the town. Amber.
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you made an interesting point. I just want clarification. You say there were 131 lights total and that 88 have since been replaced. Does that mean that the difference is just doesn't have lights, or did the old lights survive? Or how did you make a decision as to which ones to replace? And
the choices was based on availability of material at that time.
Okay.
As well as trying to space out kind of accordingly based on what we had with the distribution system that we could actually get electricity to at that time.
Thank you.
And you're talking specifically just Estero Boulevard, correct?
That is correct, yes. So what the document here that I've handed out represents, again, is a no-cost upfront change to the existing amber LED solution fixture that we have approved FWC within our tariff catalog. As you can see, this is the breakdown of what the account currently has as far as the lighting and what the impact would be from a monthly perspective. It would be about $113 per month increase for these 131 units. A secondary option that's been discussed would be to provide shielding for the existing lights that are currently along Estero Boulevard and additional shielding for the units that, again, our streetlight restoration team is working through to be able to get back to that 131 units. Those are kind of the two options that we're looking for some direction on.
And Eric, what, from the original lights to the lights you put up after the storm to the potential amber lights, what is the output? What is the lumen output? What you're going to see, the
Sure.
brightness of the light?
So from a technical standpoint, the lumen output of the direct replacements that we utilize for the 200 watt is about 15,500 lumens. The amber solution that is currently available on the catalog that we're looking at here today, output is 3,300 lumens. For a frame of reference, when the town selected the LED replacements for the side streets back in 2019, the vast majority of those fixtures are actually 3,300 lumens. They just happen to be in a 3,000 Kelvin color temperature. So from a visual reference and on a lumen output standpoint, the amber one that we're looking at here today would be equivalency of what you see primarily on the side streets.
And with the 131 poles with going to this fixture, would it meet the foot candle requirements that FDOT requires?
Based on the MPO and the various studies that the town has contracted, I don't believe so, but I would defer to the town's interpretation of those results.
Any other questions for Eric?
Eric, I don't want to put you on the spot, but does the option of shielding the existing white lights, does FP&L consider that compliant with state regulations, that option?
No, we would not.
And then a second question, I guess, is if we select the amber option that you have here, are you saying that you will have to shield those as well? And if so, how does that work and why?
Yeah, those units actually, again, are approved by FWC, and the requirement is for a house side or street side shield. In this particular application, they'd all be on the beach side, so it would be what's known as a cul-de-sac shield, which is a 3-sided shield. And those come pre-installed on the fixtures. That's a part of the package unit that we have.
And that's not necessarily done for wildlife, but just so it's less oppressive to the people who live around there? Is that why the shield is on the amber?
No, that is in response to an FWC requirement of
Okay.
shielding.
All right, thank you.
I just want to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to understand for my own, you said under option, the first option, it would be $113 per month. Was that correct?
That would be the net increase between what the current cost is for the existing 131
And
units.
that's per each, or is that an overall?
That is overall for all 131 units.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Good distinction to make there.
So I just have a question. So tell me the difference between the high pressure sodium versus the LED amber. Because high pressure sodium is what we had before, correct?
That's correct.
And they're an amber looking light.
It's a wavelength, essentially a proper amber fixture. Again, from a lighting perspective and wavelength, sea turtles are not able to see the wavelength of light. It's right around that 590 nanometer to 614 nanometer light spectrum, where a high pressure sodium is well above that that level, wavelength level.
So turtles can
They can
obviously
see it
more
That's
than the amber.
That is correct.
And I think the narrow band is important too, because the sodium lights are very have a wide band. So there's lots of mix of colors in there. Not necessarily just what you see, it's all the other colors.
That is correct. Yeah. What the human eye perceives is different.
And the spacing of these, because I know we thing, or is it different spacing?
The three lights per side road. And again, that was done probably decades ago when those lights were installed. On Estero Boulevard, we'd be replacing in kind where the existing units were pre-Ian and also where the temporary units or restoration units that we have replaced after Ian. We've always kept in kind where the locations were, and that's what we'd be looking for this temporary solution as well.
So this 131 is strictly Estero.
That is correct.
So just one quick question too, Eric, the FP&L solution, the Amber option. So are you saying this morning that FP&L would replace all those existing fixtures with that Amber fixture at no charge to the town?
That is correct. Per our tariff would be a no cost upfront conversion to the Amber units.
Thank you.
Last time we looked at this no cost upfront, it really came out in the monthly fee,
Different fixture,
different fixture.
much different fixture. Yes.
So do we have an idea of what our monthly,
These are
cost?
accurate numbers I'm presenting today.
These are?
Yes.
All right. In case we have some more questions, stay close by.
Will do. Thank you.
You know, in having you guys come up and present these two different options, again, it was done for no other reason than to get direction from the council. And I think, Keith, if you're willing to share your conversation that you had after we met with FPL about our current situation and how FWC, I believe it was FWC you spoke with, if you want to share that conversation, because I think it's important, because Keith, in my opinion, did the right thing, and he reached out to them to say, you know, how would you feel about these two options that were presented by FPL, basically because of the situation that we're dealing in. We all understand that these are not legal lights for turtle safety, but we also all realize that we're in a much different scenario, at least through this year, with the debris on the right of way. So that's the reason these two options were here. So if you want to share it, feel free. I don't want me to put you on the spot, but I think it's important. I guess it would be the easiest thing to say.
That's fine. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Cindy Johnson for putting me in touch with, what is her name? Yeah, Robinson Trindell with Fish and Wildlife. She's a PhD biologist, senior person with Fish and Wildlife, the State Fish and Wildlife Conservation Service. I called her and we had a discussion about, first question was, what's compliant? Are shielded white lights compliant? Are amber lights compliant? And she said shielded white lights are not compliant. Unshielded amber lights are not compliant. Had to be amber and shielded. So wanted that black and white answer there. I asked her about enforcement. Who does enforcement? And she said if there's an event, I think was the word she used. Does it go? I asked her, does it go to DEP? And she said no. They report those incidents directly to the Fish and Wildlife Service, which is the federal agency. And I says, okay, what is an incident? And that incident would be a disorientation is an incident. It would get reported to the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service. As far as fines, penalties, whatnot, it seemed like the first step is that light goes off. You know, the turtles apparently crawl under that light. It's pretty obvious which light was causing the disorientation, and you turn that light off, you lose that light. We talked about this season, this turtle season, and the condition of the island, and that it's going to be a tough year. It's going to be a tough year for us and for turtles. There's a lot of light out there because, like we've all talked about, you know, for the last 6-7 months, there's buildings are gone, foliage is gone. There's a lot of light on the beach? And would just changing the street lights, would that make it much of a difference? And she didn't say yes or no, but she said she agreed it's going to be a very difficult year, despite what's done with the street lights. She understood that the town is pursuing a permanent, a very good compliance solution. She understands it for the state level and compliance. And generally, she felt like if we're really trying this year, then that they understand we're in a difficult situation because of the hurricane. And that's kind of where it was left.
We'll start with Counselor King. You have anything to input? We just have to give them direction so that they can get to work.
I'm still mulling some things over, so I'd appreciate
Okay.
if you'd pass.
Sure. Vice Mayor Adderall?
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, can I have one more question with Eric from FP&L?
Sure.
Eric, I know this is complete speculation, but you're an expert in the field. So we have 88 of our existing infrastructure of lighting replaced with the white light, LED light, and we still have, there's 131 total. So if you came in and replaced that, we still haven't filled yet. If we filled those with the amber, would that compensate right now? For people who are just going outside, looking around right now to see what they know what it's like, would the additional amber lights, if we filled it out to 131, would that in essence sort of offset the brighter white light? Or would, in other words, would filling all the lights with amber, would we have a workable solution? I know the new amber solution is much more ideal, but at least would it be a practical solution in your
I think it would assist in obviously putting light where there currently may not be any. It may also fill in some of those gaps for a uniformity standpoint. But overall, I think you would probably, and again, I reference the side streets as a visual reference. That's a lumen package that's just about the same. So I think your whole level would come down, but your uniformity might be improved, which could potentially help offset. But I think in general, again, I would reference what you see on the side streets compared to currently along Estero Boulevard.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, my position is,
Hang on just a
oh,
second before I just want to ask him one
please.
more quick question because I don't think you touched on it. I'm going to, assuming we get the appropriations requests, if we can give you the go-ahead, how long would it take to implement the full island? If we start, let's say at the end of next week, we could say, we got the okay. What would be your time frame to get the new system
I would
up?
look for turtle season 2024.
Okay.
Just to add to the mayor's question, how long?
Yeah, from a,
I'm just going to ask that. What's it going to? How much time would it take to get 131 amber lights, amber fixtures in the lighting? existing
we're
ones?
confident we could have that completed by June 1st.
Okay.
If not sooner.
Thank you.
And since you're up here, so this is a lower lumen amber light. There's another one that was in testing last year. Is that not available? Is there a reason we can't put those on Estero Boulevard?
It was a cost issue that the town was not able to pursue at that point in time.
Okay, and the appropriations we're asking for is for these lights, not the brighter ones.
No, the appropriations
No,
would be for the,
Oh, for the final solution.
Yeah, the
That's-
visionary one
yeah.
that just went through the testing.
Right, okay.
and again, for reference, that's in a 12,000 lumen range.
All right.
So 3,300 is what we're discussing today. The solution there would be, 12 to 13,000.
And now how does the appropriations work as far as, I know that FPNL's model is to own the lights and then essentially lease them back with the maintenance package. If you get the appropriations for this, is that just appropriation for upfront costs or does that also reduce our
Well,
monthly cost?
You want me to take this one, Eric? I could. So the $7.9 million program or lighting system that we was worked out would be a town-owned system. With that 7.9 million would include the maintenance cost for 10 years, but it would be a town-owned system. We would just be paying for the electricity from FPL, but they would be doing the maintenance on any lights for the next 10 years. After 10 years, then the town can go out to bid to bring in another service provider as far as maintenance goes. So it would be a town-owned system as opposed to some of the systems that we've talked about in the past that would be an FPL system. This would be a true town-owned full, and I may be, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly or not, but it may be the first, if it goes through, the first island community to have a full island side streets and everything Amber solution.
Now in the past, FPNL was not allowed anybody else's lights on their poles. So it would just include a whole new set of poles?
Well,
Yes,
I'll let you touch it.
that's correct. It would be a totally independent of our distribution system.
Okay.
It'll actually be built out by one of our subsidiary companies, FPL Services.
Which is kind of interesting because, and this is getting a little bit off topic, but as part of Resilient Lee, there was discussion about using some of that grant money to bury power lines, to make them more resilient to storms. And my first thought was, it's a little silly to bury power lines and we still need all the poles for the lights, because then we still have all the poles and wires. But if we do have a town-owned system, then we may be better suited to go forward and actually bury our power lines.
The resiliency aspect was built into the package of that. The entire system would be undergrounded for the new lighting.
Thanks I forgot to mention that. Thanks for saying that.
Sure.
That's very important. Any questions for Eric?
So I just have one more. So this interim lighting that, for right now until we get everything fixed is just the additional 50 some, or is it to change all 131
It would be for all 131.
to an amber light,
That is correct.
but not the final amber light?
That is correct.
So what's the difference between the temporary and the final?
The lumen outputs is lower of this unit.
So that's the
3,300 compared to the 12,000. And again, spacing wise and from a design aspect, we're replacing in kind to a design that I can't speak to that was probably done, like I said, decades ago. So it's again, a lumen and a spacing is the major differentiator there.
And those shields that come with it, you said it was like a prepackaged thing, because I was out last night and looking at the shields and things, and they kind of only cover 2/3 of it, and the other lighting is coming off.
If you take a look at the last page of that package, you'll see what the shield would look like for that unit.
Okay, so yeah, this is different because it goes around the sides. and
Correct. Yeah,
everything.
that's what's
Okay.
known as a cul-de-sac shield.
Okay,
It is different than what you saw currently.
okay.
Any other questions for Eric?
I don't think so. I think you were looking for some direction.
Well,
Mr. Mayor.
we're going to go down the line. We'll get
Yeah,
direction.
So since I'm still on my turn, I would just personally, I would support an all amber solution that's compliant with state regulations. I think once we get 131 amber fixtures in place, even though it's not as ideal as our final amber solution, I think it's a good step forward, and I appreciate FPNL for installing those lights at no cost to the town. And I think that could be a fair interim solution.
All right, thank you. Councilor Woodson?
I too am in favor of it. I'm hoping that June 1st date can stick, or it can come even sooner than that. But I agree that this is the way we should go.
Councilor Beach?
Yeah, I concur. I do, I think we are, Amber is in our future, but I would also say that these lights are going to be not nearly as bright as it were ultimately hoping for. So when they go in, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people complaining that the Amber just doesn't put out as much lights, just as long as people remember that there's other fixtures with 4 times the output. And, this is for 1 year, like the emergency berm. It's kind of an emergency lighting system.
Back to you, Councilor King.
I'm on board.
On board with, I'm assuming whatever, okay. Very, very cryptic. Well, it sounds like you have your direction. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in that, as I told you guys, I could go either way. It's the concern I had, Bill, quite honestly, was exactly what you brought up. The lumen output really scares me, especially with the debris that's piled up on Estero Boulevard with the rebar, and it will inherently be darker without a doubt. Anyone that has a dimming system in their house, and I'm a lighting guy, so that's why I keep talking about it, but you're essentially going to be dimming your light 75% on Estero Boulevard by putting these lights in. And so I think, as you well stated, Bill, it's important that people understand that we understand it, that they also understand it, that it's going to be not nearly as bright. So please be careful, but you have your direction, right? Thanks. Next, we have the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have the Florida Sea Grant Letter of Support, Resolution 23-37 through 23-43, extension of the state of local emergency. Resolution 23-41, Matanzas Pass Bridge Maintenance Agreement, and the Fort Myers Beach Elementary Spring Music Performance. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing ordinance 23-05 temporary housing. This is the first reading and public hearing for proposed ordinance 23-05 entitled an ordinance of the town of Fort Myers Beach districts of the town providing for conflict of law, scrivener's errors, severability, sunsetting of this ordinance, and providing for an effective date. We will now open the first public hearing and schedule or second reading and final adoption on May 15th, 2023 at 9 a.m. Mr. Herron?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. This ordinance implements the direction that the council gave staff several couple months back. The ordinance comes to you with a recommendation of approval from the LPA. All LPA members voted in favor of it. So it basically allows on a temporary basis mobile homes, RVs, things of that nature that we've already been doing at the administratively. This just codifies it and finishes the process. So it's part of our regulations as an ordinance. I would point out that there is a need to correct one item, which is as you move forward to second reading, because this is an ordinance that falls within a narrow class of a certain type of zoning regulations, you all have to vote by supermajority to schedule it for 9 a.m. as opposed to in the afternoon after 5 o'clock. Otherwise, that's the requirement of state law. If you have any questions, we're here to answer it, but it just basically implements the direction previously given by the town council to town staff.
All right. We do public comment first. Can we do that first, or do we got to do it?
No, you can.
So we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. Vice Mayor, or what, Councilor Woodson, you're leaning in?
So I do have a question because I'm getting this question constantly. So people rebuilding their homes and they have an RV on their property, but plans are taking a lot longer. They're having to go in for variances. There's just all kind of things and they haven't even started. And then they're being told that, you know, it could be 18 to 24 months before they're actually in a home. So how are we going to deal? Because I know we said originally like 18 months, but then do people come back for extensions on that, or how is that going to be dealt with?
Yes, ma'am. There is a provision for the ability for applicants who have already received the approval to extend their approval in order to be able to account for those variations in the permitting process. And that's provided for in the ordinance. I also believe that there is pending state legislation that may have the effect of essentially preempting it's if I remember correctly, the last reading I saw was just a blanket 2 years that would be done. And obviously, if the state statute gets approved, then we'll implement that administratively.
So then would there be extensions if needed after that 2 years? And then what would they have to show, or what would they need to provide?
There's language in the ordinance that provides for that. They have to show that they are moving forward and that they've submitted the appropriate permits to city staff, and that they're compliant. It's just taking time, and we're aware of that. We're cognizant of that, and we have accounted for that in the draft ordinance.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff?
Mr. Town Attorney, could you, as you read the proposed ordinance, is it your reading or understanding that each resident or owner of a lot is allowed one trailer per lot? Is that how it reads?
Yes, sir. That was there is the availability that if you have a larger parcel of land, that you can come in and apply for multiple approvals. There has been some discussion of some of the larger parcels of land that are going to take time to redevelop, that they might be able to accommodate additional units, but they would have to come before you for those approvals. If it's beyond, I believe, I think it's, give me a moment here.
This is additional units may be only allowed with approval of a waiver by the town council.
That's correct. There is a provision for the ability to have more than one unit based upon the size of the property, and the reason why is there was an anticipation when this ordinance was originally drafted that we might have the FEMA trailers and an influx of temporary living units in that regard that unfortunately has not come to realization, and in some instances then the ability to place more than one on some larger parcels was provided at the discretion of the town council. But my understanding is that's not come to fruition.
If I can just maybe clarify, just to make sure it's not forgotten, it's one unit, one trailer for a single family unit. It specifies two if it's a 2-unit parcel, and then beyond that just comes back to council for request.
Thank you.
So is that so that I'm understanding that as that if someone has a duplex lot, they could have 2 trailers?
It states allowed per living unit, 1 for single family or 2 for 2-family homes.
So that's for their own use, though. That's not to be rented out to workers and that type of thing, correct?
It says only verified residents of Fort Myers Beach may be granted one of these permits. But I don't know about if they're granted the permit and then rent. John, I'm not.
The intent was that they would not be used for rentals. They would be owner occupied. So, and that's part of the submissions that are required to be provided to town staff, is that they are using it for their own personal use.
Any other questions for staff?
So this is was put in place for the emergency, does the ordinance sunset at any time?
It does provide for sunset provision in section 6, absent extension of this ordinance in accordance with state law and town code of ordinances shall terminate effective 18 months from the effective date and shall be of no further force or effect after such date.
So then, does that mean all these temporary permits go away after?
Well, again, if they need additional time, the anticipated window was that someone should be able to, it's the operative term, should be able to obtain the permits and begin the construction of their home. If they have a permit and they need additional time, they can do so. And then additionally, this town council, if it so desires, can extend the ordinance. Obviously, someone who has obtained an extension of their approval prior to the sunsetting of the ordinance would have the benefit of that extension.
And John, maybe you touched on it in the beginning and I just missed it, but the state legislature's got some wording in there specifically about this. I think it's in Senator Martin's bill. That, if I remember reading it correctly, it was 36 months.
I think it's been a moving target, but the first draft I saw was 2 years, 24 months. But obviously, we'll check as as we approach crunch time in Tallahassee. All of a sudden, we're going to see a lot of these bills either approved or die, and we'll keep track of this particular piece of legislation. And if necessary, if we deem it absolutely necessary, we can always bring back an amendment to the ordinance if it gets approved.
Okay.
Maybe we get word of what happens with the state legislation before second reading, and we're able to make those changes before then.
Okay. Is this got to be a roll call vote since the public hearing?
I just have one more
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
I guess this town manager, are we doing anything about enforcing the 1 or possibly 2 RVs on private property? Because it's not it's not happening. There are places throughout the town that there's sometimes 4 and 5.
We have been conducting some enforcement activities. I think like tents is an example. But I'll make sure that we, particularly with this passage, I'll make sure that we're enforcing. And Andy, you want to?
Thank you.
All right. Did you give me an answer, John? I don't remember. Does it have to be roll call or is it just?
Yes, it does have to
Okay.
be roll call. It's an ordinance.
Okay. Is there a motion for ordinance 23-05 temporary housing?
So moved.
Second,
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? John, did you say that do we have to read into the motion, May 15, 2023 at 9 a.m.?
I would suggest you vote on the ordinance in first reading and then make another motion to.
Okay,
set
got
the-
it. Okay. So the first motion is to move the ordinance 23-05 to the second reading of May 15th. Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by
No, no.
saying aye.
Roll
No.
call.
Roll call, sorry. Yeah, Counselor King,
Aye.
Counselor Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Counselor Woodson,
aye.
Counselor Veach.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Now, is there a motion to approve the May 15th, 2023 at 9 a.m. time frame for the second reading of ordinance 23-05?
So moved.
Is a motion? Can I get
Second.
In a second. Counselor King,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Adderholt,
Aye.
Mayor Allers, aye. Counselor Woodson,
Aye.
Counselor Veach.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we have the administrative agenda. Item A, community development staffing and related budget adjustment. Resolution number 23-44 entitled, "A Resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, approving budget amendment number 1 to the town's adopted fiscal year 2022-2023 budget attached as Exhibit A, providing for severability and effective date." Mr. Town Manager, you want to, or Joe? Anybody want to?
Well, I'll start. If you have questions, Joe or Steve can help address. What this is doing is because of the influx of and level of permitting activity that's going on now, it's shifting dollars from our, I believe this, I'm getting them mixed up now, the shifting dollars from our building fees. Okay, go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Joe Onsick from the Finance Director, and I'm apologize. This is your introduction to the way I think. So, what we're trying to accomplish here is, since we have an increase in permit revenue, one of the restricted uses of permit revenue is to also fund code enforcement, and code enforcement is currently being funded out of the general fund. And so, since we have a significant increase in permit revenue, it was a good opportunity to move the cost, the expense, the budget for code enforcement out of the general fund and move it into the building fund, where it would be funded by the permit revenue. So I don't know if you are looking at your budget adjustment summary, but it's just a one-page color-coded summary, where on the left-hand side is the general fund and the right-hand side is the building fund. And so, as part of this change, we're just accomplishing a few other minor things as well. And I guess you would call them housekeeping things in terms of the budget. So in that first column on the general fund side, we're just reclassifying the lien search revenue from code enforcement to community development. So we're just correcting the department that revenue was budgeted for. Then that next column over, and perhaps Steve can address more of the rationale behind it, but there is a contracted person who will be becoming an employee, or that's at least in terms of the budgeting. And so that's what that adjustment to community development personnel is all about. So we're increasing the personnel budget by that 53,000. And then that next column, this is where we're actually moving the code enforcement code enforcement department from the general fund over to the building fund. So that's at negative 393. That leaves us with a savings within the general fund of $340,000 that we're moving into the contingency. And this will enable us in the future, in near future, we're going to do an additional budget adjustment to incorporate some of the new positions that have been approved by town council to have been hired, and some of the salary adjustments. So this is reserving that saving to be used for those purposes later. And so that last column in the general fund is what summarizes that. So there's a net change of 0 within the general fund. Then over on the building fund side, I did it a little bit differently, only to show you the beginning budget that they have. We're moving over to it the $393,000 budget for code enforcement. There's an additional change to code enforcement personnel that's adding that $44,000 budget amount to it. And then for building services, this is where we have a significant increase in personnel that will be supported by the additional permit revenue, and that's at $942,000. And of course, that covers not only salaries, but the benefits as well. The next column shows you what the actual increase that we're budgeting for permit revenue for this fiscal year. It's almost $2.8 million. We don't need all of it to cover the additional personnel that will be added. And it's also more than what we need to cover the code enforcement department. So we actually have $1.4 million remaining that we're going to just be adding to the building fund reserve. And so that's what that $1.4 million is. And then that last column shows you the ending result of all of these changes in the building fund.
Very good. Any questions for Joe?
Joe, I've got a question. I'm a little confused. Your numbers, I'm sure, are sound, but I'm trying to understand the philosophy of this. Early on, right after the storm, we were challenged because we weren't generating enough revenue from our permit division to fund our permit division. and that hamstrung us a bit. And now we have too much revenue, or I shouldn't say too much, but an overage coming in. I guess for people who are watching, and quite frankly, for me as a counselor, I'm guessing I'm speaking for my colleagues too. I don't want people to misconstrue what you're saying here, because I know, based upon the constituent input I get, that people want to see those permitting dollars and those permitting fees go to enhance our permitting division so they can bring things in-house, they can have every resource at their disposal. Are you saying that the permitting fees at this point, and maybe this is a question of Steve or the town manager, that the permitting fees now coming in more than cover everything our permitting folks need to be fully staffed and functional to serve in this ever intense and voluminous environment?
That is correct. And I think maybe early on, there was for lack of a better word, there was like a permit fee holiday where there weren't no fees charged. So that, added to the challenge. But beginning, I think it's February and March, that's what these figures are based on. The permit revenue that was collected, those first 2 months that they began to be collected again, and then you project that out forward, that's where this figure of the total for this fiscal year of $2.8 million is coming from, which is significantly more than what is needed to staff up that department. And then it'll help carry us over into the future as well to continue that level of staffing for as far out as hopefully it's needed. And then at whatever point the permit revenue starts ramping down, then the staff would be ramped down as well.
But
Joe, let me
go ahead.
Ask a question about future you're talking about.
Yeah.
Does this include the insourcing? The next kind of phase in my mind of this was insourcing some of the personnel that are outsourced right now.
Yes, that's what this additional $942,000 would cover, would be the insourcing of the personnel. Perhaps Steve can better clarify that as far as those details.
Morning, Steve Pavosky, Community Development Director. Yes, the insourcing was included in that figure. We included the idea to bring that in-house, the plans examiners, the inspectors, the flood review, and just provide a higher level of service to the community. It was really the primary intent.
So we were going to start with a fewer number than you ultimately think we'll need, just to see how the pace of work goes. Does it include that ultimate number, or is this just for the lower number?
No, this figure includes it includes if we were to utilize all of the funds available to us, or at least a good portion of it, it includes that figure. So we would add conservatively, and if it turns out that our projections are not as high as we thought they would be, or they don't come in as quickly, then we can always slowly ramp into it.
So just so I'm clear, Steve, the in-house shift from outsourcing is already included in the funds that you're getting from this increased permit revenue. Is that true?
Right. There will be an increase in building activity over the next several years, as you know. There was over 1,000 buildings that were damaged, either heavily or destroyed. So that will increase revenue for that time period, and then this is a way to use that revenue, which it has to be used.
Right. But I guess the question I would ask you, since you're here, I know you're not under oath, but but I'm asking you is, are you getting everything you need resource-wise and staff-wise to do what you need to do for the town of Fort Myers Beach before we begin to shift money to other funds, I guess is my question.
Right. Part of this this proposal here is another attachment. It shows a list of personnel that we would like to provide higher service. There is 3 plans examiners included. There's 3 inspectors included, for example. There's a floodplain reviewer, and there's a managerial layer as well. And the idea is just to provide faster, better service. We want to do this the right way.
So the answer is yes. Under what Joe's talking about, under his new paradigm, you will be able to get every resource you need to do what you think you need to do to move things along in an efficient and appropriate manner. Is I'm trying to get you to
Right.
say that for me so I
Right.
could
This-
feel better
this-
about
This
this.
proposal is with that intent.
Okay.
Yes, that's the intent of this, this proposal is to get the people that we need to do it the right way, to do the best job we can, to really be an example for what this should look like.
And I know this council's behind you 100%. We just want to make sure you have all the tools you need to do what you need to do for the town of Fort Myers Beach. So now that enforcement is being, is funded by these permits as well, permit revenue, how does it work when it's a permitting process? You and I talked about this other day on our show, but we talked about the need for inspectors to come out on a regular basis to see how the permit is going and make sure the work's done appropriately. And that's all part of the permitting process before you can close a permit. Those inspectors, are they considered in the enforcement division, or are they considered in-house in the permitting division, or do you even separate the two?
But right now they're in general fund, because they do some work that involves someone say might have, a non-building code issue that there's a complaint, maybe, grass is too tall or something, but for the most part, they're involved with building code issues as far as someone says, there's a report maybe of a building that's being constructed without a permit, and they have to go and verify that and, speak with them and so forth. So that's all comes down to the Florida Building Code, which is that a permit's required to build.
Let me restate my question. I don't know if I phrased it correctly. So if when I pay my permit fee, some of that permit fee will be going to the inspectors who fulfill the obligation of the permit. In other words, I have to demonstrate to the town that the work has been done and done appropriately, and then inspectors come out and inspect that work and they sign off on it, and then we can close out the permit. These inspectors, are they considered in the permitting division, or are they considered in the enforcement division, or is it more complicated than that?
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
And do you have enough inspectors?
Yeah, this proposal is to shift. We have a building division, which is our building plans examiners, building inspectors. These are licensed guys that people that inspect for Florida Building Code, like your rough inspections, your final inspections. And then we also have the code compliance division, which is an assortment of responsibility, but primarily building code. It's just that they will be called to a site when there's not a building permit, but there's a complaint regarding something that's related to the building code. So this proposal is to shift all that into building division.
So you'll have more than enough inspectors to close out permits, to keep things moving. And that's what the purpose of this exercise is.
Correct.
Because the way Joe initially proposed it, one could conceive that, oh my goodness, we're going to start using permitting fees for other things when we have all these needs in permitting, but it sounds like all those needs are being met. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that indeed the case?
Yeah, I think we're potentially solving three different problems in this scenario. We're going to be increasing our level of service, faster permits, faster inspections, and so on. We're going to be shifting code into building division. So we've been paying it out of the building fund because for the most part, they're really enforcing the Florida Building Code. And someone says somebody doesn't have a permit and they go and check it out. That's what they're doing. And the third thing is that we're going to make sure that we have enough resources to accomplish the tasks that are laid out for us.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
And Councilor Aderholt, I just wanted to point out that these fees cannot be transferred to any other use. They are legally restricted to supporting building permits.
And I appreciate that. That's where it got a little confusing as well. So I appreciate the clarification.
I think it's also important to note that, as we talk about our culture shift and being the more open, communicative, that type of thing, it's very, very hard when you're using outside services and you want to develop and maintain a culture. And if you're using an outside service, that they don't have to adhere to any of that kind of information, or they don't have to act upon it. So by bringing these services in-house, we can fully execute our culture change and everything that we want to do by hiring these people internally. And it's a cost savings because there's always a markup on external services. So it's actually a cost savings to bring these people in-house. And so I'm really glad to see that we're doing this.
Yeah, that was, thanks for mentioning that. The training issue is a big part. We want to do a lot more training. We want to have consistency. We want to help our, I don't get too far in the weeds, but there's also a building code effectiveness grading schedule that's done every several years. We did not maybe get all the points we could have if we would have been in-house and training these people, because our training numbers, for whatever reason, we were not able to source those from the private provider. So it could also help and should help as far as that rating goes. And that rating affects insurance rates throughout the town.
Steve, since you're up here, should this go through and get approved, how soon would you start the recruiting process for these positions?
I would do it immediately. I would, like I said, we'll be conservative. We'll make sure, we'll confirm over time. It's going to it takes time to find licensed and, skilled folks.
What's going to be your top priority?
I mean, right now permitting, and then of course plan review. And then as we're going to build out into some of the other areas. We got to make sure that our projections are right. We think they are, but we don't want to overdo it. So we'll do it intelligently.
Thanks. Any other questions for Steve or Joe?
I guess along the,
Go ahead, Councilor King.
along those same lines, we recently approved an increase in 4. Has that been taken care of? Are they on board?
We just, there is a process when you hire folks with a background check. We just had 2 new employees this morning just show up. So we're on track with that. We have 2 more arriving, I believe, within another week.
Okay, thank you.
So then, besides what you're doing with moving compliance, this is essentially just taking the additional income we have from the load of permitting and hiring more people to deal with that permitting, right? There used to be, and I don't know if you still do this, but used to be in quieter times when the building department would allow someone to come in with their back of the napkin sketch about what they wanted to do and just get some initial advice about whether that is doable or what they might have to change in it. Is that something that's still being offered, or is that something maybe we could offer if we had some additional resources?
Absolutely. And that's one of the goals, is we want to not only, we have been doing that since the storm, but we want to do even better. I mean, that's a very common thing where, they understand the forms, but they can't quite put it together. And we want them to be able to come in person and little hand holding, one-on-one consultation really helps a lot of times to make this process faster. If we can avoid the application from going back again, and then they have to resubmit, and maybe I just want to make sure they understand exactly what's going on before they submit it. That's what holds it up, I think.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Joe.
And I'll apologize for my misstep at the beginning of this, because there's a lot of moving parts, obviously, and I decided I didn't need to get in the middle of that and let the professionals talk about it.
That and your short timer attitude.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right. Is there any more discussion? Is there a motion to approve resolution 23-44?
So moved.
Got a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously.
That enough for supermajority?
Next, we have resolution 23-33, Florida Department of Economic Opportunity Emergency Bridge Loan. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, authorizing the execution and delivery of the form of attached loan documents between the local government and the state of Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for a principal amount of $11,900,000 to fund governmental operations, making certain findings of paramount public purpose, covenanting to budget and appropriate legal available non-ad valorem revenues to pay for the indebtedness, providing for the rights, securities, and remedies for the owner of the promissory note, making certain covenants and agreements in conjunction therewith, designating an official with authority to execute documents with respect to the loan, and providing for severability and effective date. Mr. Manager?
So I don't want to don't want to confuse everybody on what's going on in Tallahassee. And it's been brought up, excuse me, this morning already, this Senate Bill 250 that has a number of layers to it. It's going to affect housing. It's going to affect issuance of building permits. It's going to affect debris clearing. There's just a ton of it that's in this emergency management bill. I just checked with our lobbyists this morning to see what the status of the bill was. And it's been amended a couple of times in the last week and is in what's called House messaging, which means it's got one more stop. That will adjust this program to stretch it from a 1-year payback with a 6-month extension by DEO to a 24-month payback with just still a 6-month extension by DEO possible. So a 2.5-year payback. The other thing that happened last night was the proviso language on this program. And I don't know how much Keith or anyone's followed the way the appropriation request process is going this time. And when the mayor and I were in Tallahassee, we were informed that these appropriation requests are not going to be approved the way they used to be, where there's a line item in the budget that says turtle lighting, X amount of money, or town hall, X amount of money. Now they're going to, both House and Senate have agreed on $350 million that's going to be given to DEM through Director Guthrie's shop. And he will go about receiving these requests for appropriations. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds with it. I'll be happy to try to answer questions. The mayor and I were looking at it. We got calls from both Representative Botana and from Mr. Book last night, where we were trying to understand the proviso language. The reason I'm going into this one is because it does allow for revenue replacement out of this new program that DEM will administer. And so certainly recommend going forward with this loan. This is something that we asked for, but you don't have to spend it, I guess. And I think it will be amended more than likely once it gets to DEO and become, instead of a 1-year, which is what's in front of you, to a 2-year program once the legislation passes. And your staff's going to have to kind of figure out how to go forward from here. You've also got FEMA money coming in that you've requested. Obviously, this is limited to operating, can't be used for capital. So then you have to have a strategy where you kind of you use some of your operating money to kickstart capital. This new program through DEM is going in this direction because the state doesn't want to pay for things that you can get paid for through other programs. That's to simplify it. I like the language that I've read last night because my complaint on our call last week with DEM with Mr. Guthrie was this, it takes time and we don't have time. And if it takes rules, then rules have to be written. And if we have to wait to hear from FEMA, which could take years, or certainly this new pot of money, which I think this is primarily the reason for the way it's going, is the $1 billion that HUD brought down and gave to Lee County. And there are certainly some of your needs that could be funded through this program, CDBG DR program. This is a very long, time-consuming process to write the plan, submit grant applications, get HUD's response and all that. So this allows the state to fund it, but if you get money from someone else, then you can reimburse the state. So that was language that I saw last night that last week I didn't think we were going to have. So I'm encouraged. There is some confusing language. It's called proviso language. If some of you know what that means, this is the direction to DEM on how this program is going to work. And I'm going to circle all the way back to what's on your agenda, and that this is what we've asked for. This in the Senate bill will take the pot of money. Just to go back to the history of it. This program was approved originally at $50 million in special session and given to DEO. And we had our presentation of the check, if you will, in Tallahassee during the league meeting a few weeks back. And this is the paperwork to implement this request. And I put out my notes in front of me. It's what, 11.9, I believe, is what the ask is for. That's projections from your staff on everything that we're going to lose, we think, for the current year. So let me pause. I see some questions and see if I've confused the heck out of everybody. Two separate pieces of legislation, one Senate Bill 250, which will double the amount of time in this and add another 50 million. I didn't point that out. Original program, 50 million. Senate Bill 250 takes it to 100 million. And it's an evergreen program, which means the next town that gets hit by a hurricane will have access to emergency bridge loan to help them survive. And so that's another exciting thing for Florida. It's a new program that'll be there in place for everybody else as well.
So if we implement this now and they change it, so it's a 2-year, do we have to go back and edit this?
Yes, it will probably come back to you. I mean, could you wait, till your next meeting? You could. We'll know then. These bills, if they're appropriations, the state budget doesn't go into effect until July 1. But if they change it to a 2-year program, I think the DEO was going to take your application and, for lack of a better way to put it, play with it. They have to go through their process to approve the paperwork that we send there. I think there'll be time to fix it if you approve it today. But yes, it'll be changed, I hope.
So Chris, if I could just go back to your broader dissertation, we have a meeting on Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. with the Lee County Resiliency Committee, which Councilor Veach is our representative. And we need to begin, and I'm hoping we'll do this near the end of our meeting, put forth a strategy as to how to approach that in terms of our needs for our town and how we prioritize those needs. And then I assume I'll be here and asked to testify Thursday night to the county, and obviously we'll want to be in concert with each other. But what you've said is interesting, because just for people who are watching, as we begin to put our priority list together, the county process with the federal funds of $1 billion roughly, and then now we have a separate process thanks to the legislature, which is great, where the state officials will have $350 million. We'll make application to as well. And it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we make application to the state as well as to the county, and some of those may be for the same projects. How do you differentiate between the two? And it sounds like we need to have a rather complex strategy as to how we prioritize what for who and when. And I assume you've thought through all that, and I wondered if you could clarify that even further, if you would.
I know that Keith is working with Tidal Basin on some long-term planning, and Andy's going to have to get up to speed as quickly as he can. They're your recovery contractor. They have knowledge about how the hazard mitigation program works, which you've already submitted application to the county, and that you should hear back within the next year. The CDBG-DR process is a very long process, and the nuances you have your own plan? Will you work with the county and and get your wants in their plan? I don't think the county wants a bunch of towns doing their own planning, but that's a conversation you'll have to have with the county staff. I know everybody was up in Washington getting trained on CDBG-DR, Chicago. I know I talked to Mr. Desjardins last week. They sent 5 or 10 people up there. He's staffing up a whole grants shop with 5 new positions. I'm being long-winded, so it will take a lot of time. How you go about creating the silos and which projects go in which silo is going to take a lot of work, and it's in progress. And I hope to talk to Tidal Basin today when I get back over to City Hall. And here they're bringing some new people in. He said they brought some new person in last week. There are other conversations I'm involved in about other people that I've worked with, that have some expertise. There are waivers, it's called, that you can apply for. And this is going to get into where y'all have to kind of think about how to do this. This is primarily low to moderate income housing money through HUD. Ms. Beach can correct me if I'm wrong. 70% of the money is supposed to go to this. I've seen maps that show where your area on the island exists. It's pretty much from the bridge to town hall, as I understand it, on the east side, on Bayside. But if your needs, as you get into recovery, are in other areas, there are communities after Katrina and other storms that waivers were applied for and received that allowed a larger percentage than 30 to go for unmet needs to other projects. And so that's a conversation that's going to take place over the next year or so about how to do that.
And I
I
appreciate.
don't know if I answered your question.
No, it's fine. I think what I'd like to do is and maybe my colleagues have similar thoughts, but I'd like to prepare my colleagues for the town manager items. I think what we're facing with the county, with the state and with the feds and tidal basin, et cetera, is an extremely complex strategic plan to execute and request all the needs that the town has in a very professional and appropriate manner and very strategic manner. And I'm going to encourage my colleagues to begin thinking about, before we get to it, a way in concert with our new town manager, not to circumvent our new town manager, but to supplement our new town manager, and to consider extending the consulting services of both Chris and Keith, so we can put forth and maintain a very strategic professional plan of attack as we move forward with these very complex issues.
So before you today is a fairly, it sounds complicated, but this one's something we asked for, and you don't have to, you ask for it, but you don't have to use it. And because it is a loan.
I would move approval of resolution 22-33.
Got a motion? I'll
Second.
second. Got a second? Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving resolution 23-33 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have RFQ-22-25-AD, ongoing miscellaneous professional services. Approve and authorize the town manager to execute contracts with the top-ranked firms under each category for ongoing miscellaneous professional services. Mr. Town Managers?
Yes, this is just it's a continuation of our professional services contracts where we itemize out, and you can see, I think there's, I don't know, a dozen or so different professional areas, and we've had 31 firms submit. We're proposing to you to select, or we've selected and recommending the top 5 in each of these areas, firms to be retained, to maintain for a 3-year period on our professional services agreements.
So I just had one question on it. Are these the same service or, companies that we have been using all along since either before or most recently after the hurricane, or are there new people that came on board that we brought into the loop for this, or?
Down to the specific firm, I can't say, but I would say it is a mix. We have some new and we're retaining some old.
Any other questions for Keith? Is there a motion to approve RFQ-22-25-AD, ongoing miscellaneous professional services?
So moved.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Now it brings us to final public comment. Okay, come on up, Terry.
Good morning, council members. Terry Prasad, resident and business owner on the island. 2 weeks ago, I came to you with a proposal for a settlement offer As of today, we have not received any response from the town. However, on April 19th, the federal court issued an order for mandatory mediation, which will be held on May 15th. At that point, we're hoping that the town manager will come, and I'm not sure which three or if all three is going to show. But I'm hoping that the council direct them to come forward with a open global settlement so that we can discuss that in front of the mediator. One of the things I want to point out to you is that majority of the fines that the town attorney is claiming that is owed by Prasad Properties is actually in dispute. We filed a rehearing order request back in August 2022, and the town attorney has yet to respond to that. And if it's responded in the negative, then they'll end up back in Lee County, because if you look at the case, you will see that there were several violations and manipulation of the town ordinance. So again, I think a lot of the council members are in favor of a settlement, and we ask and encourage you that the town manager comes to the table looking for a global settlement and have all the facts, because we'll be presenting each and every lien and each and every code hearing documentation to the mediator so that they can review it and act on it appropriately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Terry. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Town manager items. Which one of you three is going first?
I've got the mic.
All right.
I would like, I think this is mine and Chris's final meeting. And we'd just like to, welcome Andy. And really, I think you will be served very well with him. I'd like to thank Chris for giving me the opportunity to come down and work with you guys. It's been extremely rewarding for me. Oh, look at him.
I don't want to have to fight you for the mics. I'll down another one.
And then
Stand on the chair.
yeah, would you please? And then for actual business, I'm just at the M&P. Well, we won a $10 million grant last week for stormwater repairs and improvements, and that was an effort that was promoted and conducted entirely by Tidal Basin, your disaster consultant, and just there to be congratulated for that effort, because that really helps us supplement our repairs and recovery. Thursday, the M&P.
Oh, just don't gloss over that, because that's $10 million of found money. That's a big deal.
Huge,
And B, could you help explain, Keith, how that's going to be utilized? We have a long infrastructure program already, a plan in place, and instead of it costing the town, I think it was a 50 million, it's going to be 40 million, which overall will reduce our overall expenses, which potentially long-term could help on utility rates for our residents. Is that a fair
Direct
simplification?
correlation.
Yeah,
Direct
okay.
correlation. Yeah, there was a stormwater repair program prior to Hurricane Ian underway. The town had worked with the state on the revolving loan fund for up to $60 million for repairs. And this will directly help reduce that, supplement that $60 million. Of course, we're also doing a lot of repairs now because of Hurricane Ian. And some of these are duplicative. Some of it will take care of itself through that. But what it directly does is buys down $10 million of that effort, which will then directly reduce by that amount the fees that will be charged or that were forecasted for our stormwater improvements. Because when that debt was taken on, there was also a scaled increase or response to the fees, the stormwater fees that are charged to our users and our customers. So it will directly affect that to the positive.
You need to toot your horn a little bit,
Sorry,
Keith. Yeah,
sorry.
that's all right.
Sorry. Thursday at the M&P, it's heavy on planning, you'll have a presentation from FEMA on planning programs that they can assist us with. We'll have a presentation from Tidal Basin on some conversation today we've had with the way I visualize as a matrix of all the projects, all our wish, everything from rebuilding town hall down to the bottom of our wish list, and then funding sources and funding opportunities and how do those mesh together. And some flow much quicker than others do, and many are duplicative. But we'll begin that on Thursday with those presentations to you. And then also there'll be a presentation on Resilient Lee and that effort and how that kind of meshes into. So it'll be, I think, a really good brain brawl on Thursday to seriously kick off our, visioning for the island and planning there. And that's all I have.
He was trying to wear me down, see if I'd sit down. I just didn't want to steal the mic from him again. So I obviously had a chance the other night to say thank you to a lot of you. So I don't want to repeat that, but Keith and I both have been honored, and it's been a privilege for us to be your interim managers over the last 6 months. We fell in love with the community here. We think Andy will do a great job for you, and I just wanted to be here today to since it's the last meeting, to kind of say that to your face. And if we can help anything, we're always willing to try to help. Thank you.
Andy?
Kind of been a quiet one today, but I've been trying to soak it in as quickly as possible. A lot of knowledge sitting to my right, a lot of effort put in by not only them, but our staff. We'll continue to raise that bar. They've, Ronald Reagan said, a rising tide lifts all boats, and nobody knows that better than this community. So I think what we're going to see is improvement, continual improvement, and just trying to do things the right way. The transparency is important to me, and I can't understate that enough, that we have to be as transparent as possible, bringing things in-house, having planners and plans reviews, and the process. You can't inspect anything if you don't issue the building permit. So so you start with those in permits, and just you build off that. So we've got some great opportunity. Obviously, that I'm speaking to the choir, but I think it's a great opportunity for me to be able to take what I'm trying to glean from these gentlemen and from you, from being here and working with you. And I think we've got ample projects, going to prioritize, going to make lists, going to make sure we have that, checklist and things that we follow, and we are able to communicate better that way. So just more things in the transparency world. So thank you so much for what we've done so far with each other. Still got some time together, so we'll be building off of that.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, and I don't know if there is an appropriate time on our agenda to do this, but I'll do it now. I'd like for the council to consider, and I don't know if we put this on the M&P for Thursday or if we discuss it now. I'd like to begin, or at least let's take the temperature of the council to see if we can extend. Obviously, I want to make sure the new town manager is comfortable. I want to do this in a way that it's a partnership. And that's certainly how all these three gentlemen already operate. But I'd like to retain in some capacity, and maybe we need to nuance that capacity, both Chris and Keith. I think Chris illustrated in his comments how complex the next few months are. I think Keith illustrated how much money's involved. This $10 million grant is just a drop in the bucket, considering the dollars that are out there that we're talking about, that we're competing for. And so by extending their contract to some extent, in some capacity, they could help us with that broader strategy, which they've been involved in since almost day one. And I don't want us to be penny wise and pound foolish, because their contract, or whatever it costs us to extend their contract, would be paid for by the first grant or opportunity we get for an appropriation or dollars from both the county, the state, or the feds. The dollars out there are almost incomprehensible. And so the cost that we would pay to retain them in some capacity would be minuscule compared to the opportunities for us to infuse all the help that's out there for this town. So I don't want to belabor that point. I'm not sure procedurally. I could ask our town attorney at this point how we would begin that process. I want to make sure our new town manager is comfortable with that. But I think we need to begin to have that discussion while they're still here, while the council's in a meeting. We've obviously got a meeting on Thursday as well. I assume the mayor's already probably given this a lot of thought, given his world the last 6 months. So I guess at this point, I would yield to the mayor for his thoughts on it, and then obviously to my colleagues, and then to the new town manager.
Yeah, you're right, Vice Mayor Hall. I have given it a lot of thought, and I've talked with Keith and Chris a lot. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to talk with Andy about it yet, but I think, quite honestly, we need to leave that decision in the hands of those three gentlemen. The two guys sitting there know where we've been and where we're going. Andy obviously has a wealth of knowledge. That's why he's sitting here. If he feels comfortable needing extra hands, I'm all for it. If he feels that he can do it and doesn't need it, I think Chris and Keith have been very forthfront about if we need help, they're here to help us anytime we need help. I think they've demonstrated that superbly over the last 6 months. So I guess I would say the first step, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think it's a good idea if it's needed, but those three guys would know best if it would be needed or not. And if they can talk it through, and if they think that there's something that would provide benefit, then I'm all in favor of looking at extending their time here, should they want to do it. Again, they keep telling us they're retired. So I guess that would be my 2 cents on it. I would need to know, what is it specifically that they're going to do? What is it that they're going to provide? Andy is here now to take the reins and make the decisions for the town, and with our direction, and if they can provide some sort of background assistance, if he needs it, then I'd support it.
Well, and I appreciate that. I agree with everything you just said. I would just to be a little clearer, we need to put forth, and I'm sure there's some of this has already occurred, but I don't want to speak for Andy. He's got a lot more experience in running a town than I do. But a lot of his first few weeks are going to be blocking and tackling, meeting the staff, getting to know some of the key leaders in the community, meeting and touring and getting a sense of what's going on. We are at such a critical point right now, timing wise, in our town's history. These state and federal dollars and now county dollars are out there, and it's extremely time sensitive. To see a break in that continuity of this team that we have, this, I think, a formidable team, would be a huge mistake for the town. I would challenge our new town manager to give that serious thought, because his day-to-day operational absorption is only so much. I mean, you're a great leader, but you can only do so much given the challenges that this island faces, and the fact that we've got two veterans that have been here from the beginning who don't want to. Trust me, I've heard it from both of them. They don't want to be in your hair, but they do. But I do think they can provide, particularly right now, the legislature's at the almost ending, the county's gearing up, the feds are active. We need to have a continuity and a strategic plan to capture some of these significant dollars and projects for our community. And I would like to at least get a sense from my colleagues here that the council would be in strong support of some kind of a relationship that obviously Keith and Chris have to be comfortable with, and obviously the new town manager has to be comfortable with. But I think we would be remiss if we weren't bold in our ask for you all to continue in some capacity and work in those terms, and whatever terms that the new town manager might need or want. But I just don't think we can just leave it up to you all. Even though we are leaving it up to you all, I think that the council needs to send a message that we are in strong support of some kind of a continued cooperation and partnership, because I just think there's so much at stake these next few months, and just there's not one person just can't do it. I mean, you just can't do it. So that's my. I'll shut up. But I think that's so important for the town at this point.
I hear you, Vice Mayor, and I understand where you're coming from. I'm agreeing more with the mayor on this one. And I just I guess I'd ask you to clarify. You talk about the gets out there. Isn't that what we're paying Tidal Basin for? And that's who came back with the $10 million for the stormwater.
It's a fair question, Councilor King. It really isn't what we're paying Tidal Basin for. Tidal Basin did help us find that waste or that stormwater grant, but they are not interfacing with the state. They're not interfacing with the feds. They're not interfacing with the county. They're in essence providing the documentation to get reimbursement from FEMA. This is such a broader strategic piece of the puzzle. We have a hearing with the county leadership on Thursday that Councilor Veach has been leading. We have to have a specific organized strategic wish list that corresponds with their particular asks and requirements. The Fed or the state now has a $350 million fund that has its own unique strategic needs, and we have to have a strategy to apply for those dollars and requests, and we have to do it. It all has to be balanced. It all has to be in sync. And I just think to ask our new town manager to do that the first week he's here, I don't think it's fair to him. And I don't think it's humanly possible. And I think I know we've got 2 more weeks of Keith and Chris, but I think we would be, again, penny wise, pound foolish, not to continue their services in some capacity, a capacity that they're all 3 comfortable with. And again, I've already said this again, but there is a difference between what Tidal Basin does and a significant difference, and that what we would be asking Keith and Chris to do.
And I appreciate the clarification. Thanks. And Keith and I have talked about this. Isn't this something that the town, and I guess I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, maybe I shouldn't, but a grant writer, a full-time grant writer to get on staff would be an additional help instead of having to rely on these 2 all the time, I guess.
I don't disagree with that at all. Additionally, but that person would have to get up to speed and has
Sure.
no institutional knowledge at this point of what we've been through. But I love the idea going forward.
Well, why don't we let the other 2 council members weigh in on it and see what they think, since you've asked the question.
Well, I think that, I appreciate, the 2 dark shirted gentlemen over there. I do think though that going forward, the way we're set up structurally is that we don't dictate staff beyond the town manager. The town manager works for us. I think that it's important for our new town manager to be in charge and to have, the too many cooks spoil the broth at that point. But I also think that some kind of arrangement where if there's a question, phone calls, anything, any kind of ad hoc services that Andy may want, I'm open for any kind of agreement with that if you gentlemen are okay with it. But I do think it should be the town manager's call on what resources he needs.
So, and I agree with a lot that has been said. I think there is so much on the table right now, and the learning curve, and I'm not saying that you can't learn very quickly at all, Andy, I'm not, but there is just so much, and maybe we look at something on a consulting arrangement, project-based, where they're taking their knowledge from what has transpired in the last 7 months and what is coming up on the docket very quickly. And a lot of these planning things that we're looking at, and where we have to state pretty quickly where we want money to go and all the different projects that we want. So if we just looked at that framework over, say, the next 60 to 90 days, what does that look like? Just to keep the projects that are already thought about moving forward and adding, not adding, you'd still be in charge of it, but to be the person in charge of that consulting relationship when needed and when asked.
I guess we'll bring it back and try to sum it up. I guess what I'm hearing is everyone is open to continuing your services at some degree, if it's necessary, if the 3 of you decide that it's necessary. I think the Vice Mayor has raised some very valid points. There's a lot of work to be done, but we hired Andy for a reason. We feel that he's got the ability and the power to do it and handle the job. We all need a hand every once in a while. So I'm comfortable moving forward with the 3 of you discussing it. And if there's something you feel that you need, Andy, we support you 100%. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the information, the input, and the feedback. I'd be amiss if I didn't tell you in the last couple of weeks since I've been hired that I've thought about that. This has been something, the old adage of drinking from a fire hose. That's what's happening. It's a steep learning curve. It's going to take a little bit of time. I feel like I've got some confidence in what has already happened here through their leadership. And so I think I'm very open to the idea. I really think would be an addition to the staff, and it would be an addition to what you are trying to get accomplished as well. So I'm very open, and we can have those discussions and bring some information back. I appreciate the support that you've shown in that. And I guess we'll see if they're still interested.
Anything else? Three amigos? No? All right, town attorney items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. First, I want to give a shout out to Chris and Keith. It's been great to work with them. It's been a very collaborative effort, and they help me and I help them, I hope, to get through the tough times that we've gone through and that we'll continue to go through as the town recovers from Hurricane Ian. As far as the town attorney items, 3 items for you to give you an update on. We continue to work with the Lee County School Board, the General Counsel's Office on the proposed interlocal agreement with regard to the rebuild of Beach Elementary. There was an attempt by the parties to try and get that before the school board for its approval at their last meeting of last month, which was last week. We continue to work through the finer details. Really, that's what's left. And therefore, I think the school board felt more comfortable in not moving forward with its approval as it was being worked on right up until the date that the school board met. And so I have received a draft from an updated draft from the school board's general counsel's office that I'll distribute to you all, and we'll continue to work on that item. And I'm very hopeful that we will have it for your review and approval formally at the next meeting. That's my full expectation, as well as the school board will then have it available for their review and approval as well later this month. Unless you have any questions, I'll move on to the next item.
John, if I could just add a little bit more color to that. I appreciate all your efforts on that. You've been excellent to work with on this process. When the original draft came forward, the town attorney forwarded it appropriately to all the counselors. I shared it with the parents and on the ad hoc committee. We quickly met with our town attorney and our town manager at the temporary town hall, and we all went through it together, and we made some suggestions, which our town attorney then presented to the Lee County School District folks, and they were considering that, which caused the delay. And so there's been significant back and forth, and I'll be interested in seeing this most recent draft. But we've been working collaboratively with the leaders who are the parents who are leaders on the ad hoc committee. So please know that they've had input into this process, and at the same time, our town attorney has worked very professionally with the Lee County folks. We had a meeting. The town attorney and myself had a meeting with the superintendent and their counsel and the chief of staff for the school district before all this, before they went into deep negotiations. And what came back was a little different than what John and I had originally thought was going to come back. And that's why the need to counter. And again, it's very healthy, respectful negotiations going on. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully a product that we can all agree on.
One additional comment before I move on to the next item I have for you all is that I want to assure everyone that just because we continue to work on the interlocal agreement does not mean that both, as I understand it, the school board and certainly the town are not moving forward with their respective repairs and remediation of Beach Elementary, what's called the historic school, and in our case, the Bay Oaks campus, to make both usable as soon as possible, so we can both contemporaneously use those facilities at some point in time in the fall semester of 2023. So I don't want to give the impression that just because we continue to work on the ILA, that the background work is not proceeding, because it is.
To that point, John, a lot of people they don't see a lot of activity around the historic building. What's happening now is the school district is putting forth RFPs to get that work done. That's why you don't see activity, but they have a very lengthy process they have to do to get an RFP put out and then received and then processed, et cetera. So that's what's happening now.
The next item is to update you on ongoing conversations in light of the shade meetings that we've had, at least with respect to Mr. Rude's ADA lawsuit that was filed against the town, and which is currently pending on appeal before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal. That lawsuit has been dismissed. However, we are still waiting for confirmation, written confirmation through our outside counsel that Mr. Rude and Mr. Kramer are also dismissing their Burt Harris claim against the town, which was part of the discussions and negotiations, and they've confirmed via email that they would do so, but we have yet to receive it. So, we're halfway there, but I'm very optimistic that ultimately we'll be able to report that, at least with regard to the lawsuit directly involving the town, except for the most recent appeal filed by the Florida Audubon, that we will be done. So for all intents and purposes. Again, unless you have any questions, I'll then move on to my last item, which was very briefly, because it is subject of litigation as with regard to the Rude matter, Mr. Prasad's comments. We did have a shade meeting. We did get direction. We are in the process of putting that directive together to forward it to Mr. Prasad's attorney, because he is represented by counsel, and therefore the appropriate thing is to communicate with his counsel. And we'll continue to keep you updated on what the results of those conversations are. And certainly will be part and parcel of the scheduled mediation if that becomes necessary, as was discussed earlier. Unless you have any questions, that's it.
Can you go a little bit further into where we are with the Audubon?
Yes. So the Audubon appeal has been filed, and there is a procedural quirk that needs to occur before the lawsuit is then back in our lap. Writs of certiorari initially get filed, which has obviously taken place. At this point in time, the court, the judge that's been assigned the case, and it has been assigned, would review the writ of certiorari to determine whether or not it meets the minimum legal requirements to be a valid writ of cert that was timely filed, et cetera, and then issues what's called a rule to show cause. And that's a court order directed to the town and to the property owners, stating that the court has reviewed the writ of cert, determined that's legally sufficient, and we then have 30 days in which to respond to that writ of cert. I have had conversations with Mr. Kramer, Mr. Rude's attorneys, and we will be coordinating with them our response. It's anticipated that we would file a joint response, so we're not duplicating effort, and they would take the lead, and we would have an opportunity, obviously, to review it, comment edit it as we deem necessary to make sure that this town's position is adequately and properly stated in that response. So until the judge issues the rule to show cause, there's nothing for us to do procedurally. Any other questions?
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Council member items, Councilor Veach.
Okay, let's start out with the block grant and resiliently. At the last meeting, the consultants from Hagerty were encouraging people to think big because this is a huge pot of money. And I mean, some of the projects that we could potentially do are things that, you know, you don't need to go and look for a little money for. It's just, you know, the big kind of home run projects. I've heard different things, and I've heard from some people saying that these numbers, a 70% number, can be changed. You can get waivers. I've also heard from the consultants saying that it takes years and it adds a lot of complexity to it. But this grant is from HUD, and so it's, you know, housing and urban development. So it's definitely got a housing angle to it. And with any kind of workforce housing program, you can make that comply with the lower to mid income by how you implement the housing, how you get people in. And there's another kind of interesting wrinkle in it too, which means any kind of workforce housing program we want would qualify for that 70% because we would dictate that it would by the people that we're putting in. It's got to benefit people in low to moderate income area. When you're in a low to moderate income neighborhood, like we talked about between the bridge and town hall, potentially something like our streetlights, maybe if we're putting streetlights in that neighborhood, it's benefiting that neighborhood, and that would also qualify. Anything that qualifies would definitely get a little more of a priority because it's the hardest one to fill. They did mention some interesting things there about, and I'm just this little teaser, but I want to get people thinking about it. Things like burying power lines, as far as the resilient nature of this group, things that also make us stronger and things that would have been really good to have when Ian came through. Hardened cell phone towers, you know, op centers that can withstand the storm, that have a backup power that maybe could you know, run a cell tower if it was integrated into the system. There's things certainly with Town Hall and maybe Bay Oaks that we could do to try to get some of this money as far as resiliency. So there's a lot of opportunity. At the M&P, I think it's good for every counselor to think about the things that they would like to try to do on the island if they had the money.
Councilor Veach, on that point, I hope you'll give us some strategic guidance because I think we need to be in concert with each other. We need to have a little bit of a strategy going into Thursday night. So maybe you'll focus on one item and maybe divvy up the particular items. And just so we're all, and I don't think we all disagree on a bunch of this. So but I do think we need to present in an organized fashion so we're in sync with each other. So think about a strategy for what you want us to emphasize, what you want us to not emphasize, so we can be in concert with each other on Thursday night, because I do think that's such an important meeting. So I think we need a kind of a communication strategy as we go forward, because I'm not exactly sure what they'll be looking for and what they'll be interested in and how we should best present that, I guess, is my question.
And the next thing I was going to kind of talk about is this meeting on Thursday. And I went to one of these because they're doing a lot of town halls, just try to get an idea of what they actually are, right? And so I went, and the Fort Myers mayor opened it up, but then Hagerty went through and explained the program. And then they basically had questions for the public. And so the questions are very general. How are you affected? What is your greatest need after the storm? In Fort Myers, there's a lot of people complaining about mental health issues, this kind of thing. So it's for kind of public input. But I think that the place for us to really come up with our strategy is things like the M&P meeting, because as elected officials and being represented in this, we have more of a voice, I think, through that committee. I do think that, you know, it is the comment that that Councilor King made about getting a grant writer. I think that, you know, knowing that their staff has been to Chicago, has been trained on these block grants, and, you know, there's this block grant, there's a hazard mitigation grant, there's USDA is involved, the economic development's involved. And everyone, all the money has different strings and different restrictions about how it can be used. Some of them can be used together, some of them can't. That having someone to really if that's not what Tidal Basin is doing, then I think it would be good to have maybe a grant writer could do that, or maybe just someone who could take the strategy and find the pigeonholes that everything should go in. Because certainly I'm not a subject, we've been all learning pretty fast, steep learning curve since the storm, but I'm certainly no expert on the acronyms and what the restrictions are.
So it's your preference then to kind of discuss the communication strategy on Thursday then?
I think that would be a
Which is
really
fine
good
with me.
opportunity.
Okay,
Yeah, MNP.
all right,
Yeah, I
very
think it'd
good.
be a really good opportunity for just to put everything on the table, try to figure out, and have Tidal Basin here and some of the people who were trained on these grants, try to figure out what we can do and swing for the fences.
I agree 100%. So and you can help divvy that up amongst us as to what we all should emphasize. And because I assume, did you go to the Fort Myers one?
Yes.
Did the Fort Myers counselors all come up and talk individually about what they wanted? Did they have a coordinated strategy or?
They did not. No, I don't think they advertised it as a meeting. But the mayor was there, and then the public. It was not particularly well attended, but you got the impression there wasn't the sense of urgency for them as there is for us.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
And I did. I talked to them, and I think that this is all available for virtual attendance. And since we're spread around, I think it would be good to have people who are not here be able to attend. And the other thing is I added a few general questions about the future of Fort Myers Beach into their survey, so that the public will have an opportunity to express their vision, to come up with the terms of what they think is important or they think they're concerned about moving forward with the town.
I would encourage you to work with Jenny to maybe have her put something out over the next couple of days so our citizenry is reminded about the event, but also they could begin to mentally prepare about what they should come to testify about. Because I think, and maybe a quote from you, I think it'd be nice to have some, because she's got a good alert system that reaches a lot of folks, and maybe partner together just to get, because it would be nice to have a full room. Kevin Rowan would like, if he sees a full room, it makes an impact. I think
it does.
Yeah.
Is there also a link that they can dial into or a Zoom kind of thing?
That's
or-
what talking about the virtual app to
Yeah.
figure that out. And I have been working with Jenny, and Jenny works with all the other PIOs through the county. And we'll get the word out as soon as, and I'll do it on, all the counselors can put it out on their own personal sites and talk to their friends and get people to come out. Cause I think you're right. I think that public involvement is, gets the attention of people. And I understand, some of the priorities, listening to, Chair Ruane go on, and a lot of those are fit right up our alley, workforce housing, hardening. We could bury our power lines. That would be something that I think was not even on our radar as far as a project, but it would mean a lot going forward.
Anything else?
When we talked about work with the building department, I was talking with a counselor at, I think it was out of Sanibel, where they got a new town manager a while ago, and the first thing he did is he changed their building department software. The iWork system we're using, I don't get a lot of praise coming from staff about how easy it is to work. So if we have money in the building department, I think it's worth having staff look at the options of changing the software if they can be more efficient with a better software package.
Just a quick question, Councilor Veach. Do you know if the town is going to carry that county meeting, the Lee County meeting live? Or Jacob, do you know? Do you know? Just something to think about, because then we could get a lot more coverage, I would think, for our community. But I know everybody's got schedules, but
Yeah, if the staff's willing to do it, I'm more than happy to get exposure. If it's going to be, if the consultants already have a virtual mechanism, that may be the best place to go.
Okay.
I'll just add the software issue is in my recommendation notes to Andy, both for three different departments, for human resources, for permitting, and for finance, that we look at new software systems for all of those.
And I think that's pretty much just a reminder. Everybody at the town hall is 6 to 8 on Thursday, May 4th here. There's nothing to stop anybody who's listening, anybody who is a constituent from emailing the council to tell us what you think about the future of Fort Myers Beach and what you see as important.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Reese. Councilor Woodson?
I think we should go to Vice Mayor Adderholt right now.
Just a couple of things. Yeah, you know,
Nice
to
to see you,
piggyback on what you said, I think it's really important that we carry the meeting on Thursday night live. And if there's any way, if it's YouTube and then it can be pushed out through Beach Talk so that it gets more coverage on it. I think the more we can make that available to people, especially who are not here and out of town and still aren't living here, that's really, really going to be key in moving forward with this. So I just have a couple of questions. The stormwater grant, the $10 million that we got. So are we now, and I don't know where any of this sits, so it's more of a question and just a comment, but there's so many streets that still are underwater half the time when there's any kind of rain or even sometimes tide. And Bahia Villa is one of them that comes to mind initially, but you know, we still have issues on 3rd Street. There's streets throughout our island. Is that something that is going to take priority and be addressed?
Well, we are currently in the middle of a contract of cleaning the sand and debris out of all of those. And I'll get an activity report to you guys on that. It should be complete, I think, early June. We should complete it, but you're right, the rains are coming and then it's really illustrating the need for that. Otherwise, it's anticipated there's got to be repetitive rounds of that, certainly not to the degree the first one has been, but there's still a lot of sand on the streets. You're going to wash into the stormwater system. So there'll have to be repetitive rounds somehow of addressing that, just like we have with debris on the roads.
And we haven't completed our tier implementation completely.
No, we've
So
not.
a lot of the streets that you're referring to haven't been done yet.
Yes,
Okay.
some of this goes back to prior to Hurricane Ian. Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up, and now that we have Andy on board, is, we talk a ton about culture change and instituting, making our impact on a new culture and the warmth and the open arms and being front and center with our constituents. But, I looked at the mission statement that appears on our careers website. The town's mission is to provide services that make Fort Myers Beach an exceptional place for everyone. I think that only gets to one piece of what a culture and a mission should be. And so I would just hope, and, maybe there's a team that's put together or whatever to look at the full realm of what this whole culture change is about and update our mission statement to incorporate all of that in there. And then to truly have it, because we're also going to have this HR consulting group that's been doing a lot of work on salaries and all that. And there should be career pathing in there. And it's a guideline for internal as well as external of how we live our life on town Fort Myers Beach. So that's my hope. Okay, that's all I have.
If I may, Mayor, I'll have staff here Thursday night to make sure we broadcast. And I like the idea of just examining everything as far as what we're trying to put out there on social media. It's such a different world today. Everything I found out before I came down here, that's where I found everything that I could. So yeah, I agree. I'm not as knowledgeable about it, but I've got staff and we'll make sure that we'll plug in the right areas and get a group together and then even solicit some ideas from you guys.
Great, thank you.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
I agree with Councilor Woodson's comment there. It's great to embed that new messaging in all of our documents on the website. I just have a quick question for Chad. Chad, could you come up here for a second? I just had a constituent question, which I think would be helpful to other people too, because I think there's a little bit of confusion. The emergency berm that's going on right now For those who have signed the easement, still sort of time to sign that easement. Encourage people to do that. Sand is beautiful. I just got a call from, or a note from the folks at the Best Western, and they're wondering, where is the sand? Do they have to wait till renourishment? If I remember correctly in some of our conversations, Chad, the emergency berm sand is not for the north end of the island. Am I correct on that? Or how does that work for people north of Times Square?
Yeah, my understanding, Chad Schutz, environmental staff. My understanding is FEMA Category B could only be applied to our natural beach, and it was Category G funding for the previously engineered beach on the north side that we are still underway in getting money for that, and that 50,000 cubic yards for the north side would be applied during the big renourishment project to put about 1 million cubic yards on the beach.
And on that north end, would that be trucked in sand or pumped in sand, or both?
We were attempting to roll it into our renourishment, which would be dredged from our borough areas offshore.
Okay.
Not trucked in.
You used some terms that I had not heard before. When you describe the north end, you used a term to describe it. Did you say man-made beach? What did you?
Yeah, previously engineered, previously renourished. It's recognized as an engineered beach, which is why we qualified for Category G funding for that segment.
Just dumb that down a little bit at the top. So there are parts of our beach that are under different categories. Explain that to me real quick.
Yeah, so about 10 years ago or so, there was a renourishment project that placed sand on that beach.
And only that portion of the beach?
Only that portion.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the whole beach. No.
My understanding is it went from Bowditch Point to Crescent Beach Park.
Okay.
So that's been previously renourished.
So that's why you use that unique term for that section?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so they should be seeing on the north end, they should be seeing sand sometime this fall, possibly?
Yeah, I would say anywhere, depending on the dynamics of what's happening with our borough areas. The U.S. Army Corps is going to be dredging Matanzas Pass this summer. So there's a lot of things in play as to which sections or which segments of beach we renourish first.
Okay. And
but we're hoping sometime between November and May of 2024.
And if they've signed the easement and all that, are they they've got some scours that they're concerned about? Are they eligible for some town sifted sand, or is that pretty much gone at this point?
So the sifted sand is done. We also received $917,000 from FDEP. In my understanding, there's another $917,000 that may be on its way in future appropriations that is more discretionary, that could possibly be used for any issues that the council sees fit or staff.
Do we have a plan of attack for some of these scours that are outside the emergency berm area? Or are we waiting for renourishment to take care of those?
We are waiting for renourishment, but if it's the will of the council, we can look into.
What's your professional opinion? Are there areas that we need to be focused on that aren't going to be covered in those?
Yeah, so I can share with the council something that we did early on whenever there was some funding coming down from the state to Lee County. We did put in for several projects, which included a emergency berm on the north end and some sand also in the Carlos Beach, the Big Pass area, putting sand on that beach. We had asked for some monies. Unfortunately, the county prioritized some other areas, but those projects have been looked at, and we could possibly greenlight those. I'd want to defer to our coastal engineer to see, if it's a good idea, is what I'm hearing you're asking.
Okay. And I just thank you, Chad. I appreciate that. And I don't, is Jason still here? Well, Jeff, I'm going to have you come up then next. Just a couple quick questions. I think the council would find this interesting because I learned it at CellCab the other day. Jeff, you want to give people an update? Apparently the TDC has, I guess maybe the mayor could, he probably was there. So it sounds like the TDC's been responsive and they're going to be helping us a little bit at Newton Park. either you or the mayor want to talk a little bit about that a little bit? Because I think that was an interesting development.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that meeting, so I was glad to hear that staff was there.
Yeah.
So he will be able to explain it better than I could.
Beautiful.
Yep. Jeff Hauge, Interim Director, Parks and Rec, Cultural Parks and Rec. Yeah, I was at the TDC meeting. The initial committee approved most of our funding. There's a few things in there that didn't, some bike racks. The kayak shed was now deemed to, or the kayak launch was now deemed to not be eligible for funding as far as repairs and maintenance of that. But as far as Newton goes, there's money in there to do new, replace the shade structures that were there, the tiki huts, if you will. Nothing about the building, the actual cottage that was there, but to do some improvements and redo the shade structures.
And I understand there was also some funding for some temporary restrooms. Is that true?
Yes, yeah, temporary restrooms are also included in the TDC money. So once we get it back and we're ready to start doing things with Newton Park and Newton Beach, we will put temporary restrooms there for the residents.
Do we have any kind of a timeline on either the tiki huts or the temporary restrooms at Newton Park?
No, and probably Chad could probably answer that a little bit more. They're going to be using it for the renourishment, for sand, for a site for them. So it depends on when that all gets taken care of.
All right, thank you very much. And my last question is for our new town manager. You will obviously be coexisting with the existing team till May 15th. Do you want us just to direct everything towards you at this point? And then they're here in a sort of a consulting role. Is that how procedurally you would like us to handle things over these next couple of weeks?
I think the best thing is at least copy me. I
Yeah.
mean, there's been dialogue already. I don't want to just cut something off, and there might be some things. Just copy me now on going forward. I have a website, email address now. So I think that would be advantageous just to copy me and can continue to work as you have.
And just the blocking and tackling of your existence these next 2 weeks. Are you actually in the town manager's office then as of today?
Yes, I think that's where I am. Yes.
Okay.
The town manager's on the door. So
And
yes.
as you transition, Keith and Chris, will you be on location? Will you be elsewhere? How will that work?
I abdicated the desk to Andy today, so
Uh-huh.
he's where I would have been sitting. I'll sit with Dan if it's okay in the mayor's office, and I'll be in the DEM seat, I guess, unless they come kick me out. No, I'll be here for the next 2 weeks. Right now, Andy and I share the town manager email address. That's the only town email address I have. Andy has an official Andy Hyatt at fnbgov.com also, but we'll share the town manager. So he'll be getting copied on those, and we'll work on transitioning them over. And yeah, so I'll be here. Chris? I won't be here.
We can still reach you by phone. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I have purposely not formally said goodbye to you because I hope we don't say goodbye to you. And I hope you'll stay with us in some capacity. And again, congratulations, Andy. We're so thankful you're here. If you need anything from us, please don't hesitate in any capacity to reach out.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I'll also say Andy has the phone too. I was very happy to get rid of the town phone.
Very good.
And now you're moving into my space. Really pressing your luck here today, sir. Counselor King?
Porta potties, Times Square, had been zipped up and then hadn't been cleaned. Where are we on that?
I was hoping Jason was here. I know Jason and Four have been on it. We are successful in getting some of those porta potties to the south removed.
Yep.
But at
Thank you.
Times Square, the ones that are zip tied up, I'm not sure what the status is with that. The company has not been very responsive to us or to the county where they have the same services. So my recommendation is that we change contractors. That's where that is.
Okay.
No response.
Will somebody be bringing that towards us or you can just do it yourself?
I think I'd have to bring it to you guys to terminate a contract and to approve a new contract.
Thank you. Please do. Also, with the discussion of, Jim, I'm glad you're back, about the interlocal agreement. Now, the fire department kind of put a monkey wrench in the works there regarding Bay Oaks. How will that have an impact on the interlocal agreement and how far back has it pushed the timeline?
right, I'm gonna be real clear. I'm taking it on us. The fire department didn't do anything they wouldn't have normally done anyway.
Okay.
It was our shortfall with the original planning for that work there. We thought we had plans in-house and it was state contract at the time doing this work for us. We didn't have those plans in-house. So the fire department's in their total right and obligation to ask for those plans. So we're backing up. We're hiring DRMP. It's a contract that you guys approved today as one of those contractors. DRMP will come in and they'll do some architectural, they're reviewing the building, doing the architectural renderings that are necessary for the fire department's plan. And they've said a month to 6 weeks delay, which still puts us, and then 30 days for work, for our work there. So we're looking at 4.5 months, which starts getting into the school year. The school board had told us we're shooting for the first day of school, August 1st, but the school board has said, if you're in the fall, you're good. So we're still in the fall by plenty of margin.
Thank you. That's it.
All right.
Thank you, Counselor King, for coming to the school board meeting and making comments. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I just have a couple of things. Holly Smith reached out to me the other day and informed me that the Florida League of Cities is looking for nominations for secretary, and asked if I would bring it forth to the council today to see if there's any one of my members, any of the other members on the council that would be interested in nominating or being nominated for that position. I recently got on the Florida League of Mayors. This position, Florida League of Cities, has been very helpful to us throughout this entire process. So it's an impactful thing that I would like to have someone involved with. If someone has time in their schedule to do it, I know we're all very busy. I would do it myself if I had another mini me or something, but I don't know that I have all the time to get to all of these. So I'll just put that out there to see if there's any interest. I'd be happy to nominate anyone if they would like to do that, or if they want to look into it a little bit more to see what it entails and kind of get back to me, that would be great. I don't, maybe Chris, maybe you can help me out. I know that you're heavily involved with the Florida League of Cities.
Is this the big statewide or is this the regional? The league has the regional boards. Is this the Southwest Florida?
I believe it's the,
That would be a big job if it's the secretary for the whole state. And I doubt that would be it. If it's the local Southwest Florida board, that's manageable and drivable.
it's the Southwest Florida League of Cities.
I'd be okay with looking into it and getting back to you.
Okay, that'd be great. I think that they're having a meeting down here next week. I think they're coming down to someplace in Fort Myers, so I just looked at it this morning, but I've evidently had an issue with scheduling lately, which brings me to my next item. I, a while back, had agreed to go to it. It's called the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Summit up in Tampa, to be one of the panelists to essentially talk about how to be more resilient, what we think we could have done better, what we want to do to move forward. For some reason, I thought it was on May 5th. It's actually on May 4th at the exact same time as our M&P meeting. And at the time, we didn't know about the 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock meeting. So I'm trying to figure out what's, I would certainly hate to cancel on them, but, I'm trying to figure out what's the best thing to do. I don't want to miss these meetings either. So I don't know if there's a way to do both, but it's probably not even something I really need.
Is there a way you could send our staff or somebody from maybe our two now former interim town managers or somebody? Or
Well, I'll reach out to the director.
Kind of on your way home.
I'll reach out to the director and see if that's something we can do. I really feel horrible about it, but I really don't want to miss the meetings on Thursday down here. I think they're extremely important, as well as this is, and I just overbooked myself and didn't catch it. So I'll reach out to them, and if there's something maybe someone on staff can fill in for me, that'd be great.
What time is your Tampa meeting?
It's a exact same time. It's 9:40. It's 9:30 to 10:55 is the panel. There's someone from FDEM on it. Sarasota FDEM, I think, is on it too, or Department of Emergency Management down there. I think there's 4 of us on this panel, but I'll reach out to them to see if there's a potential for someone to go up there. We already have a hotel room set aside, so we would have to either change that or cancel it if I can't make it. But other than that, I don't really have anything else to add. You guys have covered everything that's on my list.
I would just, last minute breaking news to Counselor Veach, our PIO just put out an alert about the meeting on Thursday at 6 to 8 PM. So you should all see that on your phones.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you said the conflict, I triggered something in my mind. It doesn't conflict with anything, but I am going to be out of town the last part of the week of the starting the 15th, actually 18th through the 24th. My youngest graduates from college, and so I will be traveling to kick his ass out of my house finally. No, I'm sorry.
Good luck with that.
To celebrate with him his graduation. And obviously I will be available via phone or email if there's an emergency. We don't have any meetings during that time frame, luckily, but just wanted to, if you send me an email and see a response, the out of office, that's the reason why.
I'm just wondering what you're going to do with all that extra money now that college kids back.
Probably subsidizes rent while he went for the first couple of years while he relocates to a more expensive city than he's already in.
On that you used the word conflict, John. Did town clerk, did we notice the meeting for the 4th? So we're good. We all can gather and speak freely on the evening of the 4th. Okay, thank you.
Move to adjourn.
There's a that was, well, perfect. We got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion about adjourning, John, or you just want to get to it? All those in favor signify by